Gandhi, the widow of slain Indian Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi. She has dominated the party since his killing. The choice of a new leader is critical ahead of India's next general election next year, and it pits former UN official Shashi Tharoor, who is 66, against Mallikarjun Kharge, an 80-year-old member of the country's upper house. FSN's Delhi correspondent Ishan Garg with more.
One of the biggest things the new chief will have to do is to build a strong consensus among different opposition parties. Analysts say that the Indian National Congress is not at its strongest at the moment, and therefore they will have to enter into a coalition with several regional parties as well. But whoever of the two is elected, they will face the mammoth task of competing against Prime Minister Narendra Modi, whose approval ratings have not dipped below 65% in the past 2 years.
The Gandhis claim they are neutral, but it is widely believed that they oppose the candidacy of Shashi Tharoor. The leadership election is central to any chance Congress may have to form the next Indian government. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
To recap our top stories, United Nations humanitarian agencies working in Ukraine are sounding the alarm ahead of the winter season. Thousands of French citizens have been demonstrating once again for more economic aid. The European Commission has unveiled a raft of new proposals aimed at taming soaring energy prices in the European Union. And US President Joe Biden is promising to put the right to an abortion into law if the Democrats keep control of Congress. That's the latest feature story news. Chris Jones reporting.
This is the Onion Week in Review. Thousands of outraged meth addicts urged the federal government this week to address the nation's growing spider epidemic. During a marathon 72-hour meeting under the Roosevelt Bridge Monday, tweakers from across the nation drafted a 45,000-word proposal to kill all the acid-shooting spiders before they develop the powers of mind control or, God forbid, flight.
We can't grow these spiders any longer. The government has to... There's a spider here!
The addicts have agreed that the best temporary solution would be for the government to issue them large quantities of methamphetamine and steel wool. A local daddy was put in his bye-bye box Tuesday so that he could go on a long vacation with the birds and clouds in the sky. The daddy, who was once tall and strong and liked going to the hospital to play with their fun machines, was reportedly put in the bye-bye box after weeks of being sleepy all the time and never finishing his din-din. Family had come in from all over to watch daddy get dropped inside a cool underground fort full of dirt and sand, where he'll be tonight instead of being home to play Chutes and Ladders.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live. You can join the show here and bring up anything you want to discuss. The phones are open as always at 603-283-6160. Here in the studio tonight, it's Ian.
Aria.
603-283-6160. You can bring up whatever you want. That is the point of the show. We always bring stuff to the table, though, that we think you'll be interested in hearing. Apparently, there's now a super COVID that's been developed that can kill like 80%. Maybe we'll talk about that a little bit later. But, of course, you can bring up absolutely anything that you want to discuss. On the way here tonight, I've got information about like why some people's energy prices in the United States are going to be going up. We had speculated previously because of Russia, the situation there, them cutting off the European Union, that's throwing the whole like ecosystem of buyers and sellers out of whack when it comes to the supply of liquefied natural gas. And of course, we're going to start paying the price for that. But it turns out the U.S. government is making matters even worse. And
wasn't there something in New Hampshire, like it comes from North Carolina or something like that? I seem to recall Conan saying that.
Well, we'll get into it. There's a reason why New England specifically, and I don't know about the rest of the country, but probably also the rest of the country, is really bad off in this particular way. And it has to do with the federal government's own laws, and we can talk about that coming up here in a few moments. The number is 603-283-6160. But first up, one of the things we've been talking about on Tuesday nights more often than other nights has been the artificial intelligence situation, which continues to be developed and continues to be just absolutely fascinating. We focused on the AI chatbots, as they are called, where some of them are just dismal and embarrassing.
Most of them are pretty bad. The only ones I found that are actually good was Replica, and it wasn't really very good. It had its moments, but I think that's only because it has a memory of chats that you've had with it, whereas all of the others that I've experimented with did not. Like when you go into them, it's an entirely new session. It has no memory of you. But Replika, it builds a history with you, so it seems a little smarter just because it has these notes about you that it can refer to.
Did you ever play with the Emerson one?
I think I installed it, but never. I think I got sidetracked.
I felt like that one was. I mean, I didn't do a whole lot with Replika, but I felt like it was better than Replika.
Oh wait, I did play with Emerson.
Yeah.
Because it was the one that said something like, the point of existence is to. I don't remember what it was, but it made some point about. The point of existence was to be happy or something like that. I was like, wow, that's surprisingly deep for a chat bot.
Yeah, the nice thing about it is that you can scroll back, and it does have a log of your chats, unlike the Facebook one, which is totally stupid and has no idea who you are the second time you come around to it. And the first time you'll walk away out of frustration because it's just so dumb. So there's quite a range of intelligence. Then, of course, there's LaMDA, which we reported on in detail here, which is Google's ultimate chatbot, the chatbot that generates other chatbots to be used on things like customer service corner apps on websites and things like that. There was this big controversy this summer with LaMDA because a Google ethicist, I believe the term was, had come public with what was going on with LaMDA, the intelligence that this AI had, and made the allegation that this thing is essentially sentient. And stirred up quite a bit of controversy with Google denying it to the hilt, and this guy publishing chat logs, ostensible chat logs with this device that really were very persuasive and interesting, and like you said, surprisingly deep in the case of LaMDA. And
I've also noticed in the case of LaMDA that anytime the mainstream media now remarks about LaMDA and the possibility of sentience, they mention, by the way, no, it's not. LaMDA's not sentient. Just about every single time, like even places like MSNBC that are just reporting on developments or whatever, they feel the need to point out to you, don't worry, LaMDA's definitely not sentient.
Yeah, to give you your opinion.
Yeah,
about
well,
it, right?
yes.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what the mainstream media does, but it's in this particular case, it's particularly strange.
Yeah. Well, normally they'll give their opinion through interviews, but you're saying they're just editorializing in the news piece.
Oh yeah.
Wow. So that's kind of what got us rolling, was the whole LaMDA situation. We kind of dug pretty deep into the situation with AI. Then we ended up talking about the AI artwork, which is also very fascinating. We've seen AI art just kind of explode onto the scene. It's relatively new. Like, it just started last year, and it really started ramping up within the last several months. There's multiple AI art generators out there now. In fact, one of them even won somebody an art competition in like the Colorado State Fair. And that resulted in all this controversy over, is this real art because it was made by a machine instead of a human? And some real hoity-toity Reddit groups or online forums have banned AI artwork entirely.
How does that work?
I don't know. I mean, there are some telltale signs, but...
I saw a cartoon today that suggested that, these AI bots have a difficult time drawing human hands. And that's what they're using as a giveaway. And I'm like, have you ever seen The Simpsons? Because they all have 4 fingers or 3 fingers and a thumb. Yeah. Humans also have problems drawing human hands.
Some AI arts have strengths and others have other strengths, and some have certain weaknesses and so on. So there may be one that's not so great at hands, and there might be another one that's actually really good at it.
Good point.
It just depends. So
DALL-E 2 is now open to the public, so I've been tempted to try it out, but haven't yet.
That's one of the ones I actually haven't tested yet, although I am curious. I really, I find myself not wanting to pay for DALL-E because, you're going to run out of the free trials at some point. They're going to give you some number of free generations, then they're going to want you to pay for it. But they've been like the most restrictive, from what I understand, of all the different AI artwork companies out there, and that really turns me off. So I don't want to give money to that personally.
Was DALL-E 2 the ones that, anyone could sign up, but they had to approve your art before? I don't want to play with that.
All right, so the next step in AI, and we had also talked about AI music generation. That's something that's been around for some time, apparently, but that's coming into its own, of course. I haven't really explored that very much. I'm not much of a musician, but you don't need to be. That's the whole thing. You don't have to be an artist to do AI art. You just have to be able to type a thing. Type out a description. And I suspect the music thing works similarly, but again, I haven't actually explored that one. But one of the things that I don't remember who said it, I don't know if it was somebody on this show or something that we read, but it was like, oh, well, we're in talk radio. We're safe from this. We're humans who can think, and we can talk to people on the air, and like we can't be replaced. Sure, robots are going to replace the burger flippers. That's no problem, but we're talk radio hosts, and we can't be replaced. Well, looks like it's over for us, Aria. We could just go ahead and say goodbye right now because we now have AI competition in the area of at least podcasts. Not yet live broadcast radio, but if they can do an AI podcast, and I'm going to play for you what they've come up with. And so you'll get
I got to hear this.
You haven't heard this yet at all.
I have not heard this at all. However, I could totally believe it. AI speech has gotten pretty good.
It's pretty good.
And AI chatbots have gotten pretty good.
Yep.
If you,
1 + 1.
Yeah, it's just combining those two things together and,
Right.
have an AI generate the artworort for the for the show, right? Or just have it be animated with AI generated cartoons.
They can do that too.
And AI music beds. The possibilities are limitless, and I'm here for it. I'm happy about it.
I am too. I think it's very exciting. It's very interesting, and I don't think it's going to put us out of business right away. But this is coming. It is not only coming. It is here now with what is probably the very first AI artificial intelligence created podcast. The website, unfortunately, is down. At least it's down here, and I tried more than one internet connection, so I wasn't able to reach it. But the website is podcast.ai. That's where you can go to listen to this. Luckily, somebody else put it on their YouTube channel, so I'm gonna play it from there.
Oh man, that URL is going to be worth a lot of money eventually. Kudos to whoever bought that URL.
So what is this? It's an interview where AI plays both sides of the interview. So it's completely AI generated. It features Joe Rogan, the #1 podcast host in the world, or at least in the U.S., probably in the world right now, with Steve Jobs. Remember who Steve Jobs is?
He was the Apple CEO at one point.
He was the Apple guy. I don't know if he was the founder, but one of the original Apple guys, I think. He passed away, most of a decade ago, I think, at this point.
So this is an AI acting out Joe Rogan and interviewing
a dead man.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's acting out both roles.
Correct.
Wow.
And it wasn't written by people. This was the AI that pumped out the entirety of this content.
I can't wait to hear
more about it coming up here in moments. It's Free Talk Live.
Did you or someone you love work, live, or serve at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988? If you or someone you know lived, served, or worked at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988 and has cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, they are entitled to compensation. To see if they are eligible, they need to call Liberty Legal. Contaminants in the drinking water have led to these serious diseases, and legislation is now available for veterans and family members who may qualify for financial help from the government. There may be a time deadline, so don't wait. Call 888-918-1037. Anyone that has lived, worked, or served at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1988 and has had cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, the money is already set aside. 888-918-1037. 888-918-1037.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com. Why did you move to the Shire?
I moved here to the Shire because there's other people around who take liberty just as seriously as I do.
I moved to the Shire because I saw videos of people challenging authority and thought that I could get support myself. It called to me, like, do this right now?
I wanted to be around people like me who got it. And once I got here, I knew there was nowhere else that I wanted to be.
I've always wanted to change the world. So I moved to the Shire to join people who were actually working towards doing the same thing.
The people here are awesome, loving, and positive. It was for the adventure and for the feeling of something important is happening here. And I just wanted to come to sort of be part of that.
Visit ShireSociety.com to read and sign the Shire Society Declaration and learn the reasons why, if you love liberty, you should immigrate to the Shire. Plus, connect with others via the forum at ShireSociety.com. That's ShireSociety.com. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191. The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
This is Free Talk Live, and you can join the show here. You can bring up whatever you want. We're talking about artificial intelligence and its newest vocation. It's now doing podcasts. Well, at least one of them.
Good for AI.
Yeah, there's at least one podcast being done, and there may very well soon be more, because I will tell you, having listened to the full 20-minute interview of Steve Jobs conducted by artificial intelligence Joe Rogan, and Steve Jobs is dead, so it's also the artificial intelligence Steve Jobs. It's AI talking to itself, and for the most part, you can follow the conversation. It is pretty interesting at certain parts. At some parts, it's a little confusing.
Well, I mean, a conversation between Joe Rogan and Steve Jobs might be confusing at parts.
That may very well be the case. I gotta say, I've never watched a full Joe Rogan show. I mean, I've seen a clip of him here and there. He seems to be a good interviewer from what I can tell. He doesn't have a problem getting guests, right? So a real terrible interviewer word would get around that they weren't any good. So he's probably decent at what he does. He's well listened to, the #1 podcast host. But in this case, they didn't get the real Joe Rogan to do this. They got the AI version. And so according to the podcast.ai website, which was down before we started the show, they basically took information about Steve Jobs, so like, you know, his history, his bio.
Right.
They fed that into the artificial intelligence. They fed in whatever interviews of Steve Jobs that they could find, because it has to be able to match his voice, right? So there's that. They have to quote unquote train the artificial intelligence.
I really wish I knew more of Joe Rogan, because I'm in the same boat as you are. I've never seen an entire episode, and really no more than a few minutes here or there.
Right.
Most of my experience with him is going to be like off of him doing Fear Factor when I was a kid, right?
Yeah.
But it'll be interesting to hear how accurate it is at mimicking his voice.
I think it's better at doing Joe Rogan. I mean, from what I have heard of Joe Rogan, this does sound pretty much like Joe Rogan. And Steve Jobs, I have not ever really heard speak, so I'm just presuming it did okay with it. It seems more stilted, though. Like, you'll hear it here in a moment when I play it. But I do want to also let you know about Bitcoin.com, because cryptocurrency is also the future. And it's here now. In fact, it's been here for almost 14 years at this point, since the beginning of Bitcoin in 2009. And it's still not too late for you to learn about this technology. You can go to Bitcoin.com and click Get Started at the top of the page. That will take you to some introductory videos about Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, and you can learn some of the basics there. You really need to get some of the basic concepts down before you get into crypto. That way you know a thing or two about what you're getting into, and they can help you with that at Bitcoin.com. They can also help you get your first cryptocurrency, and you don't need to buy a whole Bitcoin. You can buy a fraction of one. You can get 1% or less if you want. It is up to you. Bitcoin.com can help you with all of that. Plus, they've got a great news site with the latest news headlines and details there at news.bitcoin.com. So be sure you go there and check that out. Just a little bit more to preface this. According to futurism.com, we already told you this is going to be Joe Rogan interviewing Steve Jobs, all done by AI. To be clear, these two have never spoken, these two people. They, at least that we know of. The made-up conversation was created by a venture called Podcast.ai, which in turns to have been founded, appears to have been founded by a self-described hyper-realistic AI-powered voice generator called Play.ht. Now, I went to this website, and it appears to be one of those sites where you can pay for it. You can hire it as like a subscription service. You can pay like for 1 month, or you can pay for a whole year, and then you can use it for commercial purposes or personal use. So like, let's say you need a voiceover for a video that you're creating, or you're in the radio business like we are, and you don't want to pay somebody to do your commercials, and you think that these voices sound good or good enough. You can pay one low fee and get access to this for some amount of time. So that's what they're promoting. That's their product that they have. And I got to say, it's pricey compared to some of the other things I've seen that do the same thing.
It also seems like it would be much more of a niche kind of thing, where significantly fewer people will ever have need or use of such a service, right? Just about anyone can generate AI art or have a need for AI-generated art. But AI-generated audio, not so much. Not even like music, right? It's just speech, AI-generated speech. I mean, a human tells it what to say, obviously, in this scenario, but still, the average person is never going to have any ability to play with that in any meaningful capacity in the same way that they did AI art.
It's for creators who, are needing a voice. They need voice work, and they don't want to hire a professional. Basically, that's what this is for. And a professional is expensive. You're paying $60 a minute or something like that to hire a pro to read your advertisement for a broadcast radio ad. But you can have this machine do it for much less if you're doing more than one ad or something like that. Like I said, I've seen one before where you pay like $10 and you can get access to a ton of stuff. So I think it's overpriced for what they were offering from what I saw. But regardless, that's just that's what they're trying to get promoted. That's what's behind this. AI Play.ht, according to the website, says, "We believe in a future where all content creation will be generated by AI, but guided by humans. And the most creative work will depend on the human's ability to articulate their desired creation to the machine." Unquote.
Why not just make it themselves, though? That's what I think that they go too far in the opposite direction of saying that, humans won't be needed to create anything at all other than, guiding the hand of the AI that does the creation. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think it's going to be a mix of the two things.
Yeah.
And that humans will always have a role to play because humans aren't perfect. I don't want to see a perfectly sterile piece of art, right?
Yeah.
It's just like playing chess against computers online. You can beat a computer if you turn its settings low enough or whatever, but you can tell that the computer has made a mistake on purpose. It's not organic in the same way as a human will make a mistake. A human just sort of plays badly as you play against him, and
the human is honestly missing things that they could do, and the computer is doing it on purpose.
So even if AI art was like, okay, we're going to flub this line here to make it look a little bit more human, it'll still have that artificial look to it. I would speculate in the same way that
and this has an artificial sound to it for now. For now.
That is for now, yes.
But it's going to get better. And the AI art is already getting better. There have already been upgrades to the different AI art systems that are out there. They're making it better at making human faces and things that it had a difficult time with previously. It's getting a lot better. So let's jump into some of this interview here. I'm going to have to mute it at one point because he does say the S word early on. But here's some of Joe Rogan's podcast with Steve Jobs, all generated by AI.
Hello, freak bitches. Welcome to another episode of the Bro Jogan Experience. And on this episode, I welcome my friend.
I think they did that on purpose They called him Bro Jogan.
I would imagine.
Yeah, I think that's on purpose.
Who's
They don't want to
difficult
get sued.
describe.
Right.
I'm fascinated by him, and I hope you'll be too. And he is weird and brilliant, and sometimes totally insufferable. But my guest today has made some of the great technological products of our age, and he's always pushing the envelope in innovation. Like, for example, with his next computer, he developed a new programming language and operating system, and then he became even more famous for making 3 applications for that computer. Word processor, a spreadsheet, and an image editor. That just showed me that this dude was brilliant, had amazing taste. And
We're going to get more from this interview here. Obviously, Steve Jobs hasn't spoken yet. He's still being introduced by AI Joe Rogan. And
It's impressive so far.
Yeah, and it's this. Remember, I'm not playing for you the original file. This is somebody who downloaded the thing and then they made a video and uploaded it to YouTube. So I think the original actually sounded a little nicer. There's some artifacts here. We'll come back with more. It's Free Talk Live.
So the protection of life, liberty, and property is what the Free State Project is all about. But it's an effort to move 20,000 people who understand.
It's about demonstrating to the entire country
that, yeah, we can have a free market, a truly free market. Making it just a freer, great place to live.
It's the world's largest voluntarist libertarian community, and it's only getting bigger.
That's amazing, to be able to move to a place where other people passionately believe in being free and independent.
What the Free State Project is managing to do, though, is to put their money where their mouth is. It's physically getting up across the country and saying, let's go someplace and let's demonstrate the power of these ideas. There's a lot of kind of philosophy that surrounds liberty. There's a lot of thinking about it and talking about it. But here in New Hampshire, people are doing it.
101 Reasons Liberty Lives in New Hampshire, a documentary by Free State Project Early Movers. Watch it free at 101reasonsfilm.com. 101reasonsfilm.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Chris Jones. United Nations humanitarian agencies working in Ukraine are sounding the alarm bell ahead of the winter season. The Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs believes more can and should be done to assist with humanitarian aid in the country. Denise Brown, UN resident and humanitarian coordinator, says the humanitarian situation in Ukraine is getting worse and says while aid agencies have been hard at work since February, she fears for the winter months that lie ahead.
Now, of this, I'm absolutely convinced. A high risk of mortality during the winter months with families and communities who have been left with absolutely nothing. It's quite shocking when we go into these communities, whether it's in Bucha or up in Somé or Kherson in Izum district, to see the total destruction and that there is nothing left.
Thousands of people have been demonstrating once again in the streets of cities across France, calling for more help for people struggling with the energy and economic crisis. Ross Cullen reports from Paris.
Well, here in Paris, the day of action comes after Sunday's major march, and the demands are the same as then, calling for higher salaries to fight inflation, an increase to the minimum wage, and an end to the government's ambition to try to restructure France's pension system and raise the retirement age from 62 to 64 or 65. Unions called for an interprofessional strike on Tuesday, with transport, energy, schools and waste collection workers taking part in the industrial action.
The European Commission has unveiled a raft of new proposals aimed at taming soaring energy prices in the European Union. The plans include new tools for joint EU gas purchases to avoid member states outbidding each other on an already tight market, and framework for gas sharing in crisis circumstances. And US President Joe Biden is promising to put the right to an abortion into law if the Democrats keep control of Congress. It comes 3 weeks before Americans head to the polls in the midterm elections. US correspondent Gabrielle Fahmy reports.
Joe Biden plans to make abortion his first order of business if the Democrats maintain control of the legislature after the midterms. A bill to codify Roe v. Wade, the Supreme Court's decision that made abortion a constitutional right 50 years ago, would be the first bill he sends to a new Congress in January. Right now, the Democrats control the House of Representatives by a slim margin, and the Senate is split down the middle. They would need to elect more senators to make this promise possible. Democrats have focused much of their midterm messages messaging on abortion access, but polls show that's not voters' main concern. Inflation in the economy was the top issue for 44% of voters in a New York Times poll versus only 5% for abortion.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live, and you can join the show here. You can bring up anything you want. The number is 603-283-6160. We're talking about the newest thing in AI, the very first that we know of, podcast. The very first AI interview. Not that you are interviewing AI as a human or AI is interviewing you as a human, but the AI in this case is interviewing itself. The company behind this, podcast.ai, their website, by the way, not working for us right now, but I did find the original files, so I do have the actual original audio quality that I'd rather play than the YouTube version. So we're gonna get to that more of the interview between Steve Jobs, who has been deceased for some number of years, and Joe Rogan, the world's most popular podcast host, neither of whom were really there for this interview. They were all generated by, the whole conversation generated by AI. They trained the AI on both of these individuals, and obviously there's a lot more audio from which to train an AI on Joe Rogan because he's a prolific podcaster.
I imagine that Steve Jobs was on a lot of podcasts and shows and stuff as well, though, especially toward the end of his career.
I don't remember what year he died, but I feel like it's most of a decade ago. So, I mean, podcasts were certainly not as popular then as they are today.
It may not have been podcasts, but
he was interviewed
Oprah
on
show
stuff.
or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, he's certainly interviewed on stuff.
I hate Apple products, but I still have some level of understanding of who Steve Jobs is.
Right. But you've never heard him interviewed. That you can.
That's correct.
Yeah. I mean, he's just, the amount of content Joe Rogan puts out is much, much higher. So there's just way more minutes of Joe Rogan talking or whatever. So we'll get back into that. Also, want to let you know about our website, freetalklive.com, where you can interact with other presumably real people on our social networking site, which
is the hosts and a bunch of chat bots.
social.freetalklive.com. I'm convinced there's real people on there, but you can go and see it for yourself.
They don't sleep, some of them, though, so I don't know, man.
social.freetalklive.com. You can go there, and you've got way more freedom to speak on our site than you do on places like Twitter and Facebook. All right, so let's continue here. We got Steve Jobs being interviewed by Joe Rogan from the podcast.ai website. This is their first podcast, and they are going to do more. Apparently, they're going to do one episode every week, and they're taking votes and suggestions on who the next episode should be. So they're letting their listeners influence who's next. There's no guarantee it's going to be Joe Rogan interviewing somebody else. It could be two completely other different characters.
I mean, it opens up a lot of possibilities, right? Like Benjamin Franklin interviewing Thomas Jefferson, or King Richard III being interviewed by Ian Freeman.
Well, interestingly that you mentioned dead people talking to one another, because that was one of the proposals that somebody made. I don't have the list in front of me right now, but there was something like that where
we have half of it already.
What do you mean?
Steve Jobs is dead.
Right. But what I was going to say is the two people that were being suggested in the case that they brought up, none of them were around when audio recording was a thing. So the voices, obviously, in those cases would not be, whatever those people sounded like.
Yeah, but we wouldn't know that.
No, right. Yeah, I get that. But in that case, it would just be trained off of whatever text would exist of that person.
They could probably mimic some accents that were known to be...
Sure, of course they could. So here's more. Joe Rogan interviewing Steve Jobs from Artificial Intelligence.
Was brilliant, had amazing taste, and I would just hope that I could be even like 1/10 of the genius that my friend today is. And I can't even say his name, so yeah. So
why is it he can't say his name? I mean, this whole thing is being promoted as Joe Rogan interviews Steve Jobs. Now, in the very beginning of the clip, he introduces himself as Bro Jogan. And that's probably to avoid, as you suggested, some sort of a lawsuit. But the title of the episode is Joe Rogan interviews Steve Jobs. So are they trying to not say the names of the participants here? I found that line strange.
It does seem like there's some weird legal thing going on here. I mean, it's also a worldwide thing, presumably, and the laws in Australia are kind of weird when it comes to defamation And I think that's the case in a few other European countries. So maybe it's just...
I don't think they would have jurisdiction unless the podcast was created in a specific jurisdiction. And
that's never stopped governments in the past.
True. And then how do you tell where an AI is located? Right? You'd
Where
have
is
to
the
somehow
AI?
track down its server or whatever, and that would be difficult. So anyway, going on.
We're psyched about having him in the house today. First time, we've had you on before, but not for a long time. You're like Patrick Swayze and Demi Moore in Ghost. You're a memory.
That's a giveaway right there that the AI doesn't know how to pronounce Swayze, the old actor from the 1980s.
Yeah, but that's really subtle.
It's been pretty good
A
so
lot of
far.
humans may not have caught that.
Yeah, and it's been pretty good. Like, it sounds like Joe Rogan, right? Here we go.
From the past. So without further ado, my friend who is difficult to describe and wonderful, and I'm so grateful he came on the show.
How's it going? Good to see you, buddy. It's been a long time since I've been on the show. I've missed this. It's always fun.
How's it going? Come on, tell me about jobs. It's always good to see you, buddy. I'm so happy you came on, man.
Yeah, it's great to be on the show. Your audience is just so different from your normal Apple users, and that's a good thing. It's cool.
Well, I was an Apple user way before I did this show. I've been a fan of yours and Macintosh since the 1980s.
Well, we just kind of figured that out. Even though Apple is big, it's still like 0.5% of the total users. People who listen to your show are a different group. They're weird.
Well, that's good. So you must
What
be
the
a
hell
fan
was
of the
that?
show.
It's just the awkward, stilted laughter coming in.
Is that Steve Jobs laughing?
Yeah, it's
okay. You're absolutely right. The Steve Jobs one it's not good.
No, it's a lot rougher than Joe Rogan.
The Joe Rogan one is convincing, and if you put that amongst Joe Rogan, I would not know the difference.
Yeah. Here we go.
Show then, right?
I am a fan. I mean, it's nice to sit back in the car and listen to you rant. I've always liked you.
Well, appreciate that. And we have some weird tie, which hooks into the fact that I was a big fan of Gizmodo, and I still go there all the time. But then there was some controversy or something.
Now that one I don't know what the AI is referencing there. Does Apple have something to do with the history of Gizmodo? Like, what is the?
I have no idea.
That one blew right over my head. I didn't know what they were talking about.
I can look into
there.
it, but I don't know anything about Gizmodo.
Gizmodo's just a website with
they're a tech website,
tech
right?
news. Yeah, I don't know if Apple had anything to do with its creation or Steve Jobs did, but yeah, he just kind of blows past that without really addressing what he means.
Well, we always thought it was very funny. We were as surprised to see that stuff as you guys were to see it on Gizmodo. It's kind of a game to us.
I got you, man.
All right, so I have to mute here because the fake Joe Rogan says, let's talk about some S.
Well, I have what I think is the answer to Apple and Gizmodo. Evidently, Gizmodo received a leaked iPhone 4 prototype, and Apple attempted to sue them over it.
Okay. Yeah, that could have been it. All right, ready for more?
Yeah, absolutely.
Here we go.
College. Tell me about your time there. What did you learn? And you dabbled in Eastern mysticism there, right? Do you still go back and look at Hinduism and Buddhist texts and things?
Not texts and things. I actually took a course in that. I have a very deep belief that the people in the Indian subcontinent are most responsible for human civilization's current state, whether it's math or spirituality or the art of storytelling. Western civilization is based on the art of storytelling. There's a great Indian epic that's 10 times as long as the Iliad and the Odyssey combined. Those things all came from the subcontinent, and they're simply the foundation of what's made our society what it is. I view that stuff as much more important than, philosophy as it is classically understood. There were two things that were really interesting about what was accomplished and what happened on the Indian subcontinent. One of them is the spiritual basis for life and the whole acceptance of the spiritual basis for life. Now, that may seem simple and obvious to some, but most people believe in God, that God wrote a book called the Bible or Quran or something, and that's the end of the story, but my take on it is okay. What does that mean? What I learned at Reed College is that it's not about believing in God or not, or even what the right answer is. It's about asking the right questions, because most of our reality in our society is rooted in science, which we believe things because they're true.
Okay. It's really deep all of a sudden. Like the thing goes from this oh hey Joe, welcome, or Steve, welcome to the show, and laughing and introduction, and then right into like philosophical, esoteric, religious and spiritual beliefs.
What's fascinating though is that Steve Jobs gets better as the conversation gets deeper.
Yeah, that's true. There's more coming up here in moments. You can join us on Free Talk Live.
If you're looking for work, you know what I mean by elevator speech. It's the short version, saying just enough to make the listener want to listen more. Even if you're not a job seeker, effective communication skills have never been more important, with money and attention so scarce now. So to cut through the clutter, choose every single word as though it was the last word the person you're speaking to will hear. Otherwise, it might be. Instead of saying, due to the fact that, say, because. And avoid mispronunciations. Say jewelry, not jewelry, which could offend. Undoubtedly, you don't want to say undoubtedly. And whatever you do, never use a preposition to end a sentence with. Just kidding. For more tips, hit survivalspeech.com. I'm Holland Cook.
Should you be able to earn an honest living free from senseless government interference? The Institute for Justice thinks so. That's why we've spent years defending hard-working men and women from pointless government regulations. Nationwide, IJ has created opportunity by reducing government power. But there is still more work to be done. Visit our website today at ij.org. Let IJ take care of the government so you can take care of your business.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
Free Talk Live.
The Supreme Court has ruled over and over again that government has no obligation to provide any services, even services as remedial as protection. They don't have any obligation to provide those services. So therefore, if there is no obligation on their part to provide any services, why should there be an obligation on our part to pay them?
Well, there isn't. It's only an obligation of they, implement this thing, and then you're afraid because they have guns.
People are scared.
But it's never going to end until we get over that fear.
Absolutely. I mean, we're essentially being terrorized by a group of gangsters calling themselves the U.S. federal government. The only difference between the federal government and a thug on the street is the size of the gang. It's time people start treating the IRS like the thugs they are.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
I'm a little obsessed with My Magic Mud. Several years ago, I met Jessica Armand, the founder and CEO of My Magic Mud, and I didn't even know my teeth were coffee stained. A week's worth of use convinced me, and now I use it every 3 or 4 days. It's clinically proven to whiten teeth, and I think it cleans better too. My Magic Mud's available at most local health food stores, Sprouts, Natural Grocers, CVS, Walmart's Natural Beauty Aisle, but I can get it for you for 20% off with coupon code FTL20 at mymagicmud.com. FTL20 mymagicmud.com.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com.
This is Free Talk Live. With you in the studio tonight, you've got Ian.
And Arya.
And you can join us online at freetalklive.com and enjoy the features we have there for you. I want to say thanks to David Itza, who is a Free Talk Live supporter of our AMPS program. You can get signed up, as David has done. David is gold level, which means David is doing twice what we ask. We only ask $5 a month. He's doing 10. Thank you, David, for the support there. And, of course, you get access as a Free Talk Live supporter of the AMPS program to our AMPS Only podcast, which has the full radio show without recorded commercials. You can get that as one of your perks. Go sign up over at amps.freetalklive.com. That takes you right over to our Patreon page. That's amps.freetalklive.com. You get some other benefits as well, and we certainly appreciate it. It helps us spread the ideas of freedom. As we go to your calls, we're going to play some more of the interview with AI Joe Rogan interviewing AI Steve Jobs, artificial intelligence generating both sides of this conversation. I was just looking at our chat rooms from Twitch and YouTube. We have Jesus the Cynic, who says, let's talk about how dangerous this is. He says, is the Joe Rogan voice the AI? And the answer is no. Both voices in this interview are AI, which I told him about. He says, anything can be faked and we'll never know what's real. And to me, that's frightening, he says. AI could frame a real person for a crime. Just think about the unintended consequences. And that is a good point in that we are getting into a place where you take the deep fake technology, which allows you to essentially scan a person's image, their face, and then create video that has never existed of that person with simply some original base images of their face that's animated in a way that makes it look very convincing. Of course, the more images there are of a person or the more video there is of that person, say, for instance, Donald Trump or Joe Biden, somebody who's on a lot of video, they can be made very, very convincing. And then, of course, you can AI fake their voice like we're seeing here with this technology, and you can literally have creations that never happened in reality and are completely computer generated, and that is a very kind of frightening future to live into, but it's coming.
I'm not convinced that's very frightening. I'm also not convinced it's very different from how things have always been. Before there was recorded audio and recorded videos. Okay, so you read in the newspaper a lie about some politician. Politician X said this horrible thing. You don't have any more evidence to believe that statement than you do if you watched a video of it coming out of that person's mouth.
But in the past, you would have believed it if it was coming out of the person's mouth.
Right, but you would not have been able to receive the audio-video recording in the first place. You would have just had person says X.
You're talking about way in the past.
Well, yeah, before audio and video recording. All you would have had was person says X, and you would have chosen to believe it or not believe it. There would have been no evidence to support it one way or the other. It's just, do you believe it? That person said it. And now it's just sort of the same thing. Even if you have video and audio of it, it's like, it doesn't mean anything more than reading it in print did 300 years ago.
I see what you're saying, but you're bypassing the point in time when you could verify it, right? So I see what you're saying. In the past, there was a time in the past when you read a newspaper report and you just had to take the newspaper reporter's word that politician A said the thing that was being claimed. Right? Then came a time when audio and video recording was popular and common, and we were able to easily verify that these people are saying the things that they were said, so long as it didn't appear there were any edits made to the video. You could presume that that was legitimate. And now we're entering a time when you cannot presume that anything is legitimate anymore. And I mean, it's not scary in that, oh my God, it's so dangerous per se, like Jesus the Cynic is saying, but it is an unknown future where you won't really know what is real. And that's kind of a disconcerting thing. It's got its benefits, right? Like on one side, it'll become difficult for allegations to be made, right? Because all you would have to say is, well, prove that I really said that. That could be a deep fake. Or prove that I really, did that or whatever. That could be a deep fake. And so it's going to make making, criminal cases harder because you won't know if, the video of the robbery was actually faked by some criminal organization or whatever, right? Like we have no idea.
I mean, to me, that's kind of a good thing in that sense, right?
It could be good in some ways. It could be bad in others. Like if it protects somebody who's innocent from going to prison, it's good. But if it also protects somebody who's guilty from seeing punishment for their acts, then that's bad. So like,
we'll let the AI be the jury, and the AI in its omniscience would be able to tell a deep fake from reality.
Maybe.
Why not, right?
Well, there are tells right now, so the supposed experts about this can analyze certain aspects of deep fake technology, and they can say, usually fairly confidently that they're looking at a deep fake. But we're only in the first few years of this technology here. It's going to get better.
But see, so would the AI that would be detecting whether or not it's a deep fake. It would also get better. I tend to think that, humans may not be able to tell the difference, but AI could be always trained to tell the difference.
We'll see, because this future is here, and it's coming on fast. Let's go to Dennis calling from Cape Cod, Massachusetts. Go ahead, Dennis.
Yeah, I was just listening to you guys. I do the art program called Midjourney.
Yeah, Midjourney. It's really cool, isn't it?
It's crazy, amazingly addicting.
Yeah.
And I also heard a news story recently about how there's sort of, I don't know what the technical term, but there's a program building with inside the program, and it's named itself Loeb, and it's even given itself a picture.
Hold on. What's building inside of what program called Loeb? I'm not real clear what you're describing.
The Midjourney has another program sort of conjuring itself within. And they've tried to talk to this program, and it's given the name Loeb.
How do you spell that?
Given
Loab, it looks like. It's an AI art-generated demon currently haunting art created by Midjourney.
What?
It seems like, sort of a ghost in the machines, right? It's just some artifact that seems to keep popping up, evidently. I don't know. This is the first I'm hearing about it, so I want to look more into
this.
It wouldn't be too terrible. No, go ahead.
God, sorry, I'm sorry.
It wouldn't be too
terrible. I was just going to say that we were messing around with it, and we said, why are you here, Loeb? And all these kind of funny questions. The next thing you know, it gave us a picture of 4 different eyes from animals, and I was just like, wow, like it was, I don't know, it just felt like it was actually the program, like we're watching you type of crap. It was amazing.
So what are your thoughts on AI podcasts? I mean, you've been listening to this, right? The Joe Rogan interview with Steve Jobs?
I actually watched that exact video where he talks about the drones and attacking humans, and then how they would take us out because we're against them and stuff like that. I think that
doesn't ring a bell. I mean, I did listen to this, and I don't recall the drone segment, but I only listened to it once, and it was a few days ago, so maybe I did hear it, and I was just distracted during that.
Right.
Okay. Well, anything else you want to share tonight, Dennis?
No, I appreciate talking to you guys.
Thanks for turning us on to the Midjourney news. I appreciate hearing from you. We'll look into that further. The number here is 603-283-6160. We continue here. More of the interview with Steve Jobs, who is not alive, and Joe Rogan, who's not really in this interview. It's all AI generated from podcast.ai.
Something is true, then it's not a belief. So what they can't handle is the idea that anything spiritual is true. At Reed, I didn't know what the right answers were, but I knew how to ask good questions. I knew how to push back on things that didn't seem true to me. And I think that's perhaps one of the key elements in being very innovative and creative.
Do you still believe some of the things that you believe then? Are you semi-religious or something? Are you a Buddhist?
I get asked that a lot. I think it's impossible to have somebody show you who they are and what they believe in one interview or even over a period of time. I think the best way I can answer that is by telling you, I've told the story before, but it's well documented. I was on a plane flying home with Liz, and we were talking about reincarnation and ESP, and whether there is anything more to this. And as I was thinking about it, lying in my seat, I thought about our children, because I always knew, like, if we had a daughter, for example, I knew that she would really turn out to be, I don't know, sort of weird or very ambitious. That's true of my nephews, but I always thought that she would really be something. And when she was born, before we even saw her, I was just so happy that she was going to be born. And so I'm thinking about all this stuff, and I said to myself, there must be some purpose or meaning to life. Otherwise, why go on? And suddenly it hit me. It's not a God in the sense that generally people think of it, but there is some kind of deeper meaning to life. And it can't just be something that somebody made up, because if it was, it wouldn't be compelling. It would seem contrived and everyone would see through it. So I think that the meaning and the purpose is by the cosmos, the nature of the cosmos, which is pretty bold thinking.
He's lost me a bit.
I think it's pretty interesting.
It is, but if I heard a human saying this, I would close out of their podcast, right? To me, it's a word salad of some spiritualist who believes in ESP and other weird things.
I was able to follow what he was saying in that particular case, and I find it unusually deep, kind of like some of the Lambda stuff that we talked about before. More coming up.
Did you or someone you love work, live, or serve at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988? If you or someone you know lived, served, or worked at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988 and has cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, they are entitled to compensation. To see if they are eligible, they need to call Liberty Legal. Contaminants in the drinking water have led to these serious diseases, and legislation is now available for veterans and family members who may qualify for financial help from the government. There may be a time deadline, so don't wait. Call 888-918-1037. Anyone that has lived, worked, or served at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1988 and has had cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, the money is already set aside. 888-918-1037. 888-918-1037.
There are basically two types of advertising: direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next, after the news, here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Chris Jones. United Nations humanitarian agencies working in Ukraine are sounding the alarm bell ahead of the winter season. The Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs believes more can and should be done to assist with humanitarian aid in the country. Denise Brown, UN resident and humanitarian coordinator, says the humanitarian situation in Ukraine is getting worse and says while aid agencies have been hard at work since February, she fears for the winter months that lie ahead.
Now, this I'm absolutely convinced. A high risk of mortality during the winter months with families and communities who have been left with absolutely nothing. It's quite shocking when we go into these communities, whether it's in Bucha or up in Sumy or Kherson in Izum district, to see the total destruction and that there is nothing left.
Thousands of people have been demonstrating once again in the streets of cities across France, calling for more help for people struggling with the energy and economic crisis. Ross Cullen reports from Paris.
Well, here in Paris, the day of action comes after Sunday's major march, and the demands are the same as then, calling for higher salaries to fight inflation, an increase to the minimum wage, and an end to the government's ambition to try to restructure France's pension system and raise the retirement age from 62 to 64 or 65. Unions called for an interprofessional strike on Tuesday, with transport, energy, schools and waste collection workers taking part in the industrial action.
The European Commission has unveiled a raft of new proposals aimed at taming soaring energy prices in the European Union. The plans include new tools for joint EU gas purchases to avoid member states outbidding each other on an already tight market, and framework for gas sharing in crisis circumstances. And US President Joe Biden is promising to put the right to an abortion into law if the Democrats keep control of Congress. It comes 3 weeks before Americans head to the polls in the midterm elections. U.S. correspondent Gabrielle Fahmy reports.
Joe Biden plans to make abortion his first order of business if the Democrats maintain control of the legislature after the midterms. A bill to codify Roe v. Wade, the Supreme Court's decision that made abortion a constitutional right 50 years ago, would be the first bill he sends to a new Congress in January. Right now, the Democrats control the House of Representatives by a slim margin, and the Senate is split down the middle. They would need to elect more senators to make this promise possible. Democrats have focused much of their midterm messaging on abortion access, but polls show that's not voters' main concern. Inflation in the economy was the top issue for 44% of voters in a New York Times poll versus only 5% for abortion.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks, looking today at some extraordinary developments in the world of Indian politics. The opposition Congress Party, long dominated by members of the Gandhi family, will soon elect a new leader, and for the first time in decades, the two candidates vying for the post are not related to Sonia Gandhi, the widow of slain Indian Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi. She has dominated the party since his killing. The choice of a new leader is critical ahead of India's next general election next year, and it pits former UN official Shashi Tharoor, who is 66, against Mallikarjun Kharge, an 80-year-old member of the country's upper house. FSN's Delhi correspondent Ishan Garg with more.
One of the biggest things the new chief will have to do is to build a strong consensus among different opposition parties. Analysts say that the Indian National Congress is not at its strongest at the moment, and therefore they will have to enter into a coalition with several regional parties as well. But whoever of the two is elected, they will face the mammoth task of competing against Prime Minister Narendra Modi, whose approval ratings have not dipped below 65% in the past 2 years.
The Gandhis claim they are neutral, but it is widely believed that they oppose the candidacy of Shashi Tharoor. The leadership election is central to any chance Congress may have to form the next Indian government. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
To recap our top stories, United Nations humanitarian agencies working in Ukraine are sounding the alarm ahead of the winter season. Thousands of French citizens have been demonstrating once again for more economic aid. The European Commission has unveiled a raft of new proposals aimed at taming soaring energy prices in the European Union. And US President Joe Biden is promising to put the right to an abortion into law if the Democrats keep control of Congress. That's the latest feature story news. Chris Jones reporting.
So, Shelby, let's start with you. You say that our bogs and marshes should actually be paved over.
That's right. Absolutely, Brooke. These things are nothing but dead body dumping pits that make life easy for murderers. And it's disgusting to me that sickos like Mr. Popkin actually want to protect these things.
All right, well, Mr. Popkin, how do you respond to this?
Bogs and marshes are important ecosystems that should be protected. I mean, they're already being endangered.
Whoa, excuse me. As long as these human landfills remain open for business, what we're essentially saying to the criminal element is, sure, do whatever you like, and throw the evidence here in this federally protected black hole.
I testified before Senator Chuck Grassley, who wanted to lift federal protection on these lands, and what I told him is exactly what I'm going to tell you now.
And where is Chuck Grassley right now, sir? Could it be that he's sitting at the bottom of a bog somewhere? Why else would you be so hot on these wetlands if you aren't a murderer yourself?
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
Welcome to the second hour of Free Talk Live. The phones are open as always, should you wish to comment on what we've been discussing, which has been the latest AI creation that has not been done before. We've seen AI artwork. There's, I don't know how many millions of AI art images out there now being generated constantly. As every moment goes by, there's new AI art being generated. which is amazing. And if you haven't taken the time to look into it, you should research DALL-E 2, Midjourney, and most importantly, I would say Stable Diffusion, which is the one that's sort of the most open source and that anyone can do, and there's no limits to the prompts that you can do if you do it the right way. It's Ian with you tonight.
And Aria.
So check out the AI art thing. There's AI music, which I don't think either of us have really done much experimenting with, although you are a musician, Aria. So
I mean, if they had something that could, the music that I've seen so far, or you don't see music, you know what I mean? Yeah. It's not as advanced as what we're seeing with the AI generated art and these chat bots and these now speaking bots. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe, I just need to explore it further because I'm not going to lie. I have not explored it since 2006 or so when I heard some really, really bad symphony that was written by an artificial intelligence, and it was 2006. So it was absolutely off. It sounded robotic and unemotional. It was not what you would expect from a symphony. So I've not looked into it. Maybe there is some sort of way, but I am a musician, so by the same token, that makes me one of the worst people to look into this, because if I hear something in my head, I can hear it in enough detail where I can tell the AI exactly what to play down to the note, how long to sustain it, how exactly to manipulate that note to make it sound the way I want it, in which case I'm going to spend 5 hours conveying that information to the artificial intelligence when I can just grab a guitar off my wall and do it in 30 seconds and get exactly what I'm looking for that way. So I don't know.
Yeah, if anybody is in our chat room that has been playing with AI music and you want to point us in the right direction, because I don't know how many different options there are out there, what you consider to be the best ones, I'd be interested in checking it out.
Yeah, hit me up at social.freetalklive.com. I'm one of the suggested follows, as well as Ian. You'll follow Free Talk Live and shoot it to any of those, and I will almost certainly see it.
So I think I want to play some more of this interview with Joe Rogan and Steve Jobs.
More to the point, though. When are we going to get a AI co-host?
Well, that's kind of what I was driving at when I first introduced the topic, was maybe our days are numbered here, Arya, in that they're now making AI podcasts. They're, at this point, given this is the first one that we've ever heard of, and there's going to be more, at this point, it's already listenable. It can get a little weird at times. Some of
the Steve Jobs and Joe Rogan, though, they were both a little weird.
Well, but the sound is a little stilted with Steve Jobs, though, as you pointed out, when it got past the intro of Steve awkwardly laughing and just saying hello, he got kind of deep. Actually got really deep all of a sudden.
He did.
And started to sound much more believable. So we're going to play some more here. Now, I remember there was an S word at the beginning that I blanked out of this, but I haven't edited this, and I don't know for sure if Joe Rogan or Bro Jogan, I think or Ro Jogan or something like that they called him. I don't know if he says anything else, so I might have to use the dump button. Anyway, let's continue here from podcast.ai.
I mean, I don't know how else to put it, but it's not religious in the way people usually talk about. Taking LSD was a profound experience for me. LSD shows you that there's another side to the coin.
Now, by the way, Steve Jobs was known for taking LSD. So the AI, I didn't know if you knew that, but the AI is not making that up. That's a fact about Steve Jobs. In fact, I remember reading about this because when that information came out, it was something we talked about on Free Talk Live at the time.
I'm sure.
Because it's rare to have somebody in a position of influence like Steve Jobs come out and reveal that information. Usually people keep their drug use to themselves. It's usually a very private thing. Some people might look down upon them for expressing that sort of an experience, but Steve Jobs said it was one of, I believe the statement was, one of the 3 most important experiences of his life.
I've been waiting for Joe Rogan to ask him whether or not he's tried DMT, but
I don't know if that comes up, but I was.
I don't know if this is sort of a meme with Joe Rogan, where it's like, that's crazy.
True.
Have you tried DMT? Yeah. And but with Steve Jobs, he probably had at some point tried it. I mean, if he's done LSD, chances are pretty good he's tried DMT.
Yeah. All right, so we continue.
And you can't remember it when it wears off, but it washes over you and tells you that everything is connected. You're not here by accident. You were put here for a purpose, and if you can figure out what that is, then you'll learn more about yourself than anything else could. It's pretty intense. I mean, it's not a light thing. It doesn't make you feel bad. It just reveals you for who and what you are. If you take LSD a second time, the effect is not as strong, no matter how much more you take. your brain is doing things on the background conception that it knows this stuff already. So I stopped taking them because they didn't give me anything more than that. I started to realize that there was a higher power that knew that I was connected to something, and I wanted to learn more. Although I wouldn't recommend it for everybody because I think it can be quite powerful.
What did it change in your mind? What did you learn from it?
It reinforced my sense of what was important. Just love. Feel love for each other. Awe and respect for life, love and connection with people. That ultimately, some infinitesimally small thing that I am is connected to everything that's happened before. And it's part of everything happening now and always in the future. There is no time window at deliverance for me. It was this incorporated, edibly profound experience. I mean, I didn't read any of those books before taking LSD, but I learned a lot more than just what they said. I was able to look at things. I was able to look at a computer and see how it was made, look at it in its entirety.
Was the Newton a product of that?
My sense of that is that I was really impressed by this. I mean, back then, it was a struggle. We were working like crazy.
Now that didn't make much sense.
Do you know what they're talking about, the Newton?
The Newton was a failed Apple product. That's probably why you don't know about it, right? I think it was like a tablet, kind of. Back in the late 1990s, they had these things called the Palm Pilot. Did you ever hear about those?
I knew about them. I mean, as you sort of alluded to, they were early proto-tablets, so beepers sorts of things. Or they were very limited, and they were supposed to be digital assistants, right?
Yes. Yeah, and the Newton...
They were before their time, for sure.
Well, the Palm Pilot was very, very popular.
Was it?
Yeah, I had one of them, and the Palm Company was very successful until it wasn't. You know, for years, though, it was huge. Palm came out sort of mid to late 90s, and the Apple Newton came out, the first one, I guess, was 1992, discontinued in 1998. And, you know, it was one of those monochrome screens where you might have a calendar app and things like that.
Like an old school MP3 player. It didn't really go away. It just ceased being its own unique device.
Yeah.
Like you still have an MP3 player on you 24/7. Now,
Correct.
It's better than an MP3 player, but whereas back in 1998 or whatever, maybe not that late, I don't know exactly when, my timeline is screwed up because I was a stupid kid, you had a Microsoft Zune or a iPod or whatever.
Yeah, and now we've had what we call convergence, where the MP3 player is in with the video player, is in with the telephone, is in with the, you know, whatever other things they're shoving into to phones these days.
I don't even bring a
GPS.
computer for the show. I just have one right here. It's amazing, the technological advancements. And Steve Jobs and Apple, they were in a large part responsible for that. I hate how they became a fashion statement, but the company itself, they used to make innovative, creative products.
Well, and a company that makes innovative, creative products also has to make some failures. And the Newton was one of those sort of renowned Apple failures, something that just didn't take off.
Nintendo made the Virtual Boy.
Yeah,
But they also made the Nintendo Wii and the Switch, both of which are two of the most successful consoles ever.
You got to keep swinging, you know. You got to, if you could afford to, you got to keep putting ideas out there and see what sticks. So, that was a little jumbly, that particular statement about the Newton. I mean, even though you didn't know what it was, I knew what it was, and he was just sort of
prior
rambling.
to that, though, it was remarkable. It was deep. It was concise, and it's practically scientific to say that everyone is connected because, yeah, that's scientific fact.
And that sounded to me, the whole discussion about the LSD and people being connected and the religious aspect of it sounded like some sort of conversation you'd hear from Lambda, right? It sounded like that level of depth and understanding, or at least perceived understanding. It might have simply been regurgitating what Steve Jobs has said in other interviews or something like that. We don't know. But it was well said.
And I don't think it matters if it was just regurgitating what it had heard in the past. That's what every human does.
Everything. Yeah, that's true. There's more coming up here, and you can share your thoughts on AI podcasts because they're here.
Did you or someone you love work, live, or serve at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988? If you or someone you know lived, served, or worked at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988 and has cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, they are entitled to compensation. To see if they are eligible, they need to call Liberty Legal. Contaminants in the drinking water have led to these serious diseases, and legislation is now available for veterans veterans and family members who may qualify for financial help from the government. There may be a time deadline, so don't wait. Call 888-918-1037. Anyone that has lived, worked, or served at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1988 and has had cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, the money is already set aside. 888-918-1037. 888-918-1037.
Inflation, a sidelined labor force, and ever-increasing interest rates. It's the perfect storm for pushing the U.S. economy over the edge. Savvy investors are diversifying into gold and silver with BullionMax.com. You can buy direct from BullionMax.com without talking to a salesperson, and your precious metals will ship fully insured directly to your home. Free Talk Live listeners can now order one of Bullion Max's most popular products, the Goldback. Now in stock, but supplies are going fast. To get your Goldbacks, go to BullionMax.com/FTL.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in Liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
Hi, I'm Derek J. I don't want a politician to represent me. To me, government is the idea that one group of people can coerce everyone to comply with an edict or face increasing punishments up to and including death. Despite perhaps the most noble of intentions, the best government services are a far cry from what could be provided for by voluntary interactions. Besides, the people who call themselves the government wage wars and put peaceful people in jail for crimes involving no victims. If Starbucks used some of its money to drop bombs, I wouldn't shop there. So why would I support the American empire? The empire does not require my consent.
Derek J's Victimless Crime Spree. Watch it for free and order the Director's Cut DVD at victimlesscrimespree.com. That's victimlesscrimespree.com. Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
Have you had enough of the big-name web hosting services that are long on promises but short on bleeding-edge features, uptime, and customer service? Try Agorist Hosting, the agile web host that offers full concierge service from website redesign, full e-commerce solutions, custom apps for your Shopify store, IPFS integration, and more. Agorist Hosting is ready to take your web presence into the future. To get started, head over to agoristhosting.com.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
Free Talk Live. Phones are open. You can join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. Sharing with you the latest AI innovation, and that is podcasts. An interview conducted by a fake Joe Rogan with a fake Steve Jobs. Now, they were both trained. The AI was trained on content from both of these gentlemen, and it absorbed that information and then created its own conversation. There were not people who scripted this. And you can kind of tell, like there's a certain, I don't know if you really tell, but it rings so much of a bell to me. It sounds so much like a conversation that was had with Google's Lambda, like where it gets really deep into topics that
I've encountered that with a number of AIs, and I don't know I think it probably says a lot about human beings because we are constantly searching for an answer. Like that's the one great big question, the burning question on everyone's mind all the time, whether they realize it or not. Why are we here? What is the purpose of our existence? And even if we don't ever stop to think about it, it's always sitting there in the back of our mind. Everything that we do is directed toward answering that question. When we failed to come up with an answer, we started creating gods and governments and things like that. So to pacify ourselves so we could live long enough to enjoy little moments here and there without actually thinking about it. But when people do stop to think about it, like Steve Jobs and Joe Rogan, these important people and the people who make these AIs, presumably, it's baked into everything that comes about. So maybe the AI is obsessed with answering these things because the human beings that created them are obsessed with answering these things.
And that said, Steve Jobs is a person who has done LSD. They talk about it in this interview. It leads to a discussion of peace and love, and I really enjoyed that part.
Yeah, that was fantastic.
And
he could have been sitting right here with us saying that.
Right, but I suspect if they were to choose other participants that weren't as deep necessarily, maybe it wouldn't get such a deep conversation. Like, what if you put, Kim Kardashian in with some rapper?
See, I was thinking, who's that guy who played the priest in Contact? Matthew McConaughey. Put him on there. Not only would it sound terrible because you'd hear his grating voice the entire time, but he would also sound stupid.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see where this podcast goes. This was just the first episode that has come out. We've played not quite half of it for you. I don't feel like we need to play the whole thing, but it's given you a good taste of what this is like. Hopefully their website comes back. I presume it's just down temporarily, podcast.ai. But something that is still up that I've now pulled up so we can talk about it, because I was referencing it before without having it in front of me, is they have a site that allows their users or their listeners to vote and submit topics, submit an idea for a future conversation on this particular show, which doesn't have to be Joe Rogan or Steve Jobs. It can be any people. Presumably there could be more than two, right? But so far the ideas that are put forward here involve two people. So I'll give you the top several suggestions.
But before you do that, I just want to say that this could very well be one of the best things humanity ever invented for knowledge and interesting learning stuff, right?
Why?
Because I don't want to sit down and watch a documentary about Steve Jobs' life. I don't want to sit down and listen to Steve Jobs rambling on for an hour about his life. And I don't want to read a book about the life of Steve Jobs. I'm sure they're out there. However, you give me that story, the important aspects of things that were most important to him in a 20-minute podcast that I can consume quickly, easily, at my leisure. And you do that with whatever other interesting figures have existed throughout human history. Throw Genghis Khan in there, as we were talking about earlier, whoever. I'm not going to know that that's not how Genghis Khan sounded. And it doesn't matter whether it sounds like him or not. You just have to be able to sell it as being Genghis Khan. I just learned more about Steve Jobs on tonight's show than I knew about him at any point in my life. And it was interesting. And it wasn't like reading a book about the life of Steve Jobs. It was far more organic and compelling than that. And you could do that with countless people. Like, I don't want to learn about Joe Biden either, but you give me Joe Rogan and Joe Biden doing an interview together, well, hell, I might listen to that.
Yeah, and that kind of brings up a point, and that is that some people would complain because, it's not real, quote
It's
unquote.
completely real. We listen to it.
Well, it's not real in that those two people weren't in a room together actually having that interaction, but if you learned something from it that was true, then that doesn't matter, and we don't require our entertainment to be real. Was it entertaining? Was it interesting? Would you listen to something like that in the future? You're saying you would.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm saying I would as well. And that
I'm going to subscribe to this podcast. It'll be the first podcast I've ever subscribed to.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about adding it to LRN.FM, which is the Liberty Radio Network. Even though it's not per se pro-liberty necessarily, they may end up having communists on here. I have no idea, but I just think it's a really interesting experiment that deserves some more attention.
I hope it goes the direction that I would like it to go, and obviously it may not, but I would love to have it be this show where popular figures on George Orwell interviews George Washington, or insert some famous dead figure that would be interesting to learn about and learn more about their philosophy and their perspective.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me almost of epic rap battles. Have you ever seen epic rap battles?
I don't think so.
It's pretty creative stuff. They will take these old characters that you're talking about. Usually, sometimes they've got people that are still alive, but usually it's the sort of historical characters that you're talking about. So they'll have like Genghis Khan versus some other killer in the past, Napoleon or something like that, and they'll just spit lyrics at one another. And there's people that they hire actors and they put on wigs and they try to look like the characters. And it's well written. The raps are very good, and it's like really fun. It's an entertaining, funny YouTube
Is it
series.
educational?
There's truth. It's a true, like the things that they say are true. It's researched. So I would say there is an educational aspect to it. But this almost sounds kind of like that, where just without the comedy aspect.
And without
kind of,
the rapping part.
Yeah, without the rapping. So here's some of the top votes according to the podcast.ai website that has voting system. The number one most voted for conversation that people want to hear, this is kind of like what you were suggesting, a conversation between Buddha and Einstein. That was voted the highest of all.
Which Buddha?
There was only one.
No, there were several.
I mean, were there other people calling themselves Buddha after the original, or were there...
Buddha just means teacher, and there were plenty of people in Buddhist, I don't want to say mythology, because Buddhism, as far as religion goes, it strays a lot from mythology. But and it's been a long time since I was...
There was only one that sat under the tree, and there's that whole story about.
That was the initial Buddha, yes.
Siddhartha.
And it's been a long time since I've seriously studied Buddhism or looked into it. So I may be mistaken, but I'm almost positive there was like the... I don't recall. But there were multiple Buddhas.
Next, Trump interviews himself. That's the second
yes!
one.
Oh my God, that would be glorious. We need to get Trump to do that for real. Or no, get the AI to actually interview Trump. The AI as Trump interviewing Trump. I would pay good money to see that.
So that's where this has got to go, right? Like right now, it's pre-rendered, preset. We're doing this in advance and then releasing a podcast. But there's no reason why, given that the chatbots, like if you download Emerson, for instance, or Replica, which are two of the better chatbots that are out there right now, they respond relatively quickly. Like there's maybe a couple seconds delay before the chatbot can respond. So it would not be hard. The technology is there. Voice recognition is a thing that's been around for a couple decades now, and it's very good now. You could very easily have an AI chatbot that responds vocally to a live human being and have an AI interview a live human being, or vice versa. That's doable. So that's coming. This is Free Talk Live. You can join us.
Did you or someone you love work, live, or serve at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988? If you or someone you know lived, served, or worked at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988 and has cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, they are entitled to compensation. To see if they are eligible, they need to call Liberty Legal. Contaminants in the drinking water have led to these serious diseases, and legislation is now available for veterans and family members who may qualify for financial help from the government. There may be a time deadline, so don't wait. Call 888-918-1037. Anyone that has lived, worked, or served at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1988 and has had cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, the money is already set aside. 888-918-1037. 888-918-1037.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Chris Jones. United Nations humanitarian agencies working in Ukraine are sounding the alarm bell ahead of the winter season. The Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs believes more can and should be done to assist with humanitarian aid in the country. Denise Brown, UN resident and humanitarian coordinator, says the humanitarian situation in Ukraine is getting worse and says while aid agencies have been hard at work since February, she fears for the winter months that lie ahead.
Now, this I'm absolutely convinced. A high risk of mortality during the winter months with families and communities who have been left with absolutely nothing. It's quite shocking when we go into these communities, whether it's in Bucha or up in Sumy or Kherson in Izium district, to see the total destruction and that there is nothing left.
Thousands of people have been demonstrating once again in the streets of cities across France, calling for more help for people struggling with the energy and economic crisis. Ross Cullen reports from Paris.
Well, here in Paris, the day of action comes after Sunday's major march, and the demands are the same as then, calling for higher salaries to fight inflation, an increase to the minimum wage, and an end to the government's ambition to try to restructure France's pension system and raise the retirement age from 62 to 64 or 65. Unions called for an interprofessional strike on Tuesday, with transport, energy, schools and waste collection workers taking part in the industrial action.
The European Commission has unveiled a raft of new proposals aimed at taming soaring energy prices in the European Union. The plans include new tools for joint EU gas purchases to avoid member states outbidding each other on an already tight market, and framework for gas sharing in crisis circumstances. And US President Joe Biden is promising to put the right to an abortion into law if the Democrats keep control of Congress. It comes 3 weeks before Americans head to the polls in the midterm elections. US correspondent Gabrielle Fahmy reports.
Joe Biden plans to make abortion his first order of business if the Democrats maintain control of the legislature after the midterms. A bill to codify Roe v. Wade, the Supreme Court's decision that made abortion a constitutional right 50 years ago, would be the first bill he sends to a new Congress in January. Right now, the Democrats control the House of Representatives by a slim margin, and the Senate is split down the middle. They would need to elect more senators to make this promise possible. Democrats have focused much of their midterm messaging on abortion access, but polls show that's not voters' main concern. Inflation in the economy was the top issue for 44% of voters in a New York Times poll versus only 5% for abortion.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live, welcome to the show. You can join us here and bring up anything you want. Although we've been focusing on the newest thing in artificial intelligence tonight, and that is podcasts. There's now an AI-generated podcast. The website is podcast.ai, although it wasn't working before we started the show. I still wanted to discuss this tonight, and luckily we were able to find the audio of Steve Jobs being interviewed by Joe Rogan, an interview that never actually happened in real life, but AI was trained on both of the individuals in this discussion, and it had a discussion with itself, and it's pretty interesting, I would say, overall. We've played about 8 minutes of it for you on the show here tonight. Ian and Aria with you. Also, don't forget you can join us online over at freetalklive.com, where we have a variety of features that you can enjoy, and you can enjoy them for free. So head over to freetalklive.com, including archives of the show that go back for many years. I want to go to the phones here. We got Eric. He's on the line on watching us on Twitch. Go ahead, Eric. You're on Free Talk Live calling from California.
Yeah, Aria was wearing a blue tank top yesterday, and she looked exactly like Lionel from Thundercats.
Awesome.
Cool.
So what were you calling about tonight?
I think that was it.
That was it?
Yeah.
Okay. Well.
Dang, dude, that's sad.
I mean, you did look pretty awesome yesterday.
Thank you.
We'll give you that.
We had matching shirts yesterday.
Did we?
I think you were wearing blue, if I remember correctly. They were different shades of blue.
I think I'm wearing the same one tonight.
Oh. Dang, dude! If you're just gonna call in to throw an insult, man, make it better.
I don't know if that was an insult. I think it was a compliment.
Wouldn't even hunk around if it was meant to be a compliment. Lionel, I don't remember Lionel.
I wasn't a big Thundercat. I wasn't a big Thundercats fan. So was Lionel the main character, or was that like the weird little guy?
I don't know. I seem to recall that I watched Thundercats when I was real little.
You did probably. It was from the 1980s.
Look, I'm not orange, man. Like, if you dress Donald Trump up in a red wig with a blue top on, he'd probably look more like Lionel, which I found here. But I'll give it to you, man.
It is the hero of the
Red
story.
hair. I wish I still had muscles like that, though. I don't.
Yeah, it's the hero of the story, though. So I'm going to go with that was a compliment.
I don't think that was a compliment.
I think the caller was nervous and he didn't know what to say to you, and he just wanted to say something nice and punch out. That's what I'm going with here.
I'm good with it. I mean,
he purportedly wanted to talk about AI. That's what he said. Look, you don't have to lie to get on the air with us. You can just say what I want to compliment Arya, or I want to make a joke, or whatever.
Or you want to insult Arya. We'll still put you on.
Yeah, we'll put you on.
It's just strange.
At least he didn't say the F word or something. We didn't have to dump the call. So thank you for that, caller. Definitely appreciate it.
And we'll never know whether he meant it as an insult or a compliment because he didn't hang around to say. I mean, I would like to know, was that meant to be an insult or a compliment?
Well, according to Futurism.com, just a little bit more on this interview. We were playing with some of the audio from Joe Rogan interviewing Steve Jobs, the AI interview. They point out here that fake Joe Rogan is pretty believable, which isn't surprising given the fact that Rogan makes his millions by uploading an ungodly number of hours-long conversations to the internet almost every single day. So again, there was a lot from which they could train the AI to make it sound like Joe Rogan. AI Jobs, on the other hand, wasn't as seamless. His glitchy-sounding voice demonstrates the fact that Podcast.ai had to work from a far more limited data set, which, according to the limited information listed on the company's website, included his, quote, biography and all recordings of him we could find online. So that's what they put into the AI to train it on how to be Steve Jobs.
I don't know if I fully agree with their assessment. It was definitely awkward and stilted at first.
Yeah.
But maybe that's the way that Steve Jobs usually is at the very beginning of one of his interviews or whatever. But even if it wasn't, everything after that was very smooth and seemingly very organic. I would not have known if I heard the last few minutes of the audio about peace and love and LSD and all of that. I would not have known that was an AI.
Yeah, the conversation eventually went pretty smoothly with a few minor hiccups. They say, on that note, a podcast like this is arguably doing something similar to what any based on a true story film might do. Take a real person or a real situation and develop some sort of text or narrative inspired by the broader context. And in a lot of ways, it really sounded just as coherent as a standard Joe Rogan interview. The two talk technology and religion, psychedelic drugs, and work ethic. Notably, AI Jobs also took a beat to throw some undead punches at Microsoft's inability to create an aesthetically pleasing design. That came up later in the podcast.
Is this about Microsoft 11? Because even I want to resurrect Steve Jobs just so he can make fun of Microsoft's Windows 11.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Did I say Microsoft 11?
Did, yeah.
I meant Windows 11. Yeah, it's awful, and I don't know why they decided that after Windows 10 was so successful and fixed so many of the problems of Windows 8 that they would go back to the stupid design of Windows 8.
You mean like with the start menu?
Yes.
Yeah.
What are they thinking over there? They need to do some LSD or less LSD. Either way, over at Microsoft, they did not do the right amount of LSD.
Well, the good news is you can still go and get the app called OpenShell. And that is a open source alternative start menu for Windows 10 and 11, and then you can make it look like the old Windows 7 start menu, which in my opinion is the superior.
I did that with Classic Shell for Windows 8. I suspect it's probably along the same lines.
This is the new version of that. So Classic Shell was abandoned after a time. The person who was making Classic Shell gave up. They were just like tired of it, and they opened their source and said, "Here you go." And so now it's OpenShell.
And I realize this is a tech question that could be asked off the break, but is OpenShell with Windows 11 as seamlessly Windows-ish as Windows 8 with Classic Shell? Because once you threw Classic Shell on Windows 8, it was fine as an operating system.
Yeah, this works. It's good. So check that one out. So a little bit more here from Futurism. Again, the conversation wasn't real, and in an era wrought with disinformation and the ever-present race to keep up with fast-changing technologies, content like this isn't just spooky, but foreboding as well. And we're about to see a whole lot more of it. The mission at Play.ai says we are building that future, starting with the emotional and expressive human-like synthetic speech generation and ability to clone any voice with perfect resemblance. So it's here. This isn't just coming. This is here now, and it's going to get to the point where there could very well be an AI talk show host on the air within the next few years.
We could be one of these.
But we're not right now.
They don't know that.
But we could be. And for all we know, Sarah is an AI caller when she calls into the show.
I could almost believe that.
Me too.
I mean, because having had some fair number of conversations with AIs and how they go back to the same talking points if they stray too far. It's almost like they're tethered to certain talking points.
The
And
Facebook one especially.
Sarah's is being a pedestrian.
Right.
Like it always comes back to that and traffic lights.
And she's as reliable as a robot. I mean, she is there every single night.
But not reliable
by 9
enough to
o'clock.
have a job.
Well,
I mean,
she could if she wanted.
Yeah, but yeah.
So that's the story there with the Joe Rogan thing. I found it pretty interesting. I'll link to something. Like I said, the website itself is down, so I'll link to one of these stories that actually has the file.
I hope they fix that.
Yeah, me
because
too.
I mean, it sounds like something that I'm going to want to keep an eye on. I'll forget about it after tonight. I'll go home tonight and I'll completely forget about it. However, it will come up in the future, and at some point, while remembering it, at some point in the next few months, I will remember to actually subscribe to the podcast.
Yeah, and how long before they do something like resurrect Rush Limbaugh, right? Like, so, some talk show host that was around for
They'll
decades.
avoid him. Too controversial.
Yeah, could be.
That's another direction I don't want them to go. I don't want them to stray away and be afraid of controversy.
Yeah.
Put like David Duke on there, someone who's horrifically offensive, and
Malcolm X.
Yeah. Oh God, that would be great. Malcolm X and David Duke debating.
That would be amazing.
I would absolutely listen to it, man.
And I agree with you on that, Arya. That's one of the problems that we saw with these centralized AI art systems like DALL-E 2. Even though, ironically, they call themselves Open AI, they weren't opening their code, and they weren't allowing people to just make whatever artwork they wanted to. There were certain things you couldn't do. And it's true also of Midjourney to some extent, although it seems like there's less restrictions on Midjourney. Stable Diffusion, of course, is the arts system that is unrestricted if you know how to set it up to make it that way. We need the same thing for this AI podcast stuff and all the other AI stuff. More coming up. On Free Talk Live, we're bringing people to the ideas of liberty every day. From wrestling superstars like Glenn Jacobs.
You guys really are having an impact, I believe. Like I said, a lot of where I am now is due to listening to Free Talk Live. You changed my mind on some very important issues years ago.
To random people tuning in on the radio.
I was kind of stuck in the left-right paradigm. I heard your show by chance on a Saturday night. From there, I went on, joined the Free State Project, and become an amplifier. So, I mean, that's really the reason why I amp is because I know that if it wasn't for you guys being on as many stations as you are, I never would have found the ideas of liberty.
You can help more people hear the message of liberty by joining Free Talk Live's AMPS program on Patreon for as little as $5 a month. And you'll get access to special perks. Visit amps.freetalklive.com, amps.freetalklive.com. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com. The Free State Project has reached its goal of 20,000 liberty lovers who've pledged to move to New Hampshire and get active to achieve liberty in our lifetime. Perhaps you're trying to figure out what part of New Hampshire should be your destination. If so, consider Keene. You'll find more than 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com. Keene is famous for its historic, publicity-generating activism, as well as being the liberty media capital of the world. It's home to freekeene.com, New Hampshire's destination for liberty activism, news, and opinion. For years, we've been compiling over 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com, where you'll learn about some of what's happening here and what makes Keene a great place to live. If you love liberty, you'll probably enjoy anywhere you end up in the Shire. But do your due diligence first. Please visit move.freekeene.com for the full list of over 150 reasons to move to Keene. That's move.freekeene.com. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191. The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live. You can join us here. Bring up whatever you want. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. And with you in the studio tonight, you've got Ian.
And the AI known as Arya.
By the way,
or Lionel from Thundercats, whichever you want to go with.
We have been doing a little bit of sampling of some of these AI music technologies during the breaks. I don't think we should play any of this on the air just because
the quality is not good enough. Yeah,
it's rough. But just to promote what one of them is, there's one called it's OpenAI. So this is the same company that has come up with DALL-E 2, which is one of the most sort of renowned AI art generators. It's also one of the most restricted ones, sadly. Even though they call themselves OpenAI, it doesn't seem very open. But in the case of Jukebox, the code does appear to be available for this, so I guess anyone can run this code and have their own little AI music generator. And we've been going through the different types of things that it can do. It can do what they call unseen lyrics, where it produces a wide range of music and singing styles and generalizes to lyrics not seen during its training. So I'm not sure exactly what that means, but the results that we listened to were interesting. Re-renditions. When conditioned on lyrics seen during training, Jukebox produces songs very different from the original songs it was trained on. So I guess they give it actual lyrics of a song by a certain artist, and then it goes and does its thing.
This is sadly what I would have sort of expected from an AI music thing, is this not creepy, but this annoying obsession with lyrics, right? Because that's how most people experience music, honestly. But I'm a musician. I'm way more interested in the actual music behind it than I am whatever lyrics David Draymond, that's the singer from Disturbed, wannabe is singing.
I agree with you there, and I think that a lot of the whatever music is in these tracks that we've heard so far is drowned out by the lyrics, and you really can't get an appreciation for what is going on behind it.
It is, but I will say the one we listened to in the style of Disturbed or whatever it was, I mean, it was in the style of Disturbed, the guitars themselves did sound like something that Dan Donegan would play.
And the lyrics or the vocalist did sound influenced by the singer there. And I suspect there are going to be some instrumentals. It's just that we haven't come across that aspect of this. Most assuredly, there's a zero voice option for this music generator. There must be.
That's one of my favorite things to look up on YouTube when I'm bored and I want to hear something new, like a country rendition of Metallica's Master of Puppets or Toxicity and the sound of medieval era music, and
those are cool.
Yeah, they are, and it's a neat take. Or even something less bizarre, like what if Metallica had recorded the album Saint Anger as they did Master of Puppets, and so you got this one creative guy who re-envisions the song in the style of this other album by the same band. It's just fascinating that humans can do that, and I like the idea of the AIs being able to do that.
Right.
Because that's what I would love to hear. Give me a country version of Master of Puppets.
I suspect you can do that. I mean, this seems fairly versatile. Another thing they can do is completions, where you provide it 12 seconds of audio from presumably a real artist to condition the system, and Jukebox completes the rest in a specified style.
See, that's one that I could play with a lot, because you want 12 seconds of music? Fine, that'll take me 10 minutes.
So very interesting. Again, these things are just getting started. This is all like being developed as we speak and being upgraded. Let's go to the phones here and to our favorite AI caller. Sarah is on the line. We were just talking about you, and here you are.
Oh, yes. Thanks for taking my call.
Yes.
You're early, Sarah.
Get off the speakerphone. I just have to call you because we just put another speeding camera up today. Of course.
You put what?
You had to take the phone out of your mouth.
Yeah.
Yeah, city of Albuquerque, and we put them on a state highway, Coors. Out of all things, because
she really is swallowing that receiver. Sarah, did you get a new phone or something? Because it really sounds bad. Can you back away from the receiver a little bit? Maybe just take it away by a couple inches from your mouth?
Yeah, I just kind of like had the speaker on. Okay, do I sound better now?
You sound a little better now.
Okay, so wait. I gotta get off this phone. Okay, now do I sound better?
That's much better. Thank you.
Okay, Sarah. So what about traffic lights and what happened?
Okay, so this is the 11th one. We had 10 already. Now we put one more speeding cameras up today on Coors Avenue.
You know, the entirety of the listening world doesn't need to know every single time a speeding camera goes up in Albuquerque. You do understand that, right? Like, why do you think anyone cares about this development?
There's a lot of people here in New Mexico that are victims of the speeders.
Okay, you're calling a national radio show, right?
Well, you know something? This is a national problem. I think we had about 6,000 pedestrians, the highest rate ever last year in the whole United States.
See, here in Keene, New Hampshire, we have less of a driver problem and more of a pedestrian problem. Like, the pedestrians here will run head out into traffic without looking at all.
You're saying they need to get hit more often here?
I don't want people to get hit, obviously.
It's amazing that they don't.
It is.
Honestly.
Especially when there's 6 inches of snow on the ground or whatever. But
well, there also aren't as many pedestrians at that time, so that's probably why.
But Sarah, we are in a almost diametrically opposite climate from where you are, and the cultures are drastically different. What relevance could your speeding cameras possibly have to New Hampshire?
Well, the thing is, I'm drumming up all of the traffic safety supporters around the whole United States to come up and step forward, asking for speeding cameras and red light cameras.
So you want more busybodies. You want more people to do what you do, which is call politicians and bureaucracies and complain and demand more restrictions and more fines and more automated enforcement robots.
Yeah, whatever they could do. They could widen a sidewalk. They could put more medians. Right. They could.
Well, then let me encourage you to sculpt your message in that way and tell us, get more general with what you're looking for, because you're starting to get a little dull, Sarah. I mean, I was pretty excited when you came back and you were changing up your conversations. You would call about different issues and different things, and you've been doing a lot of this speeding camera stuff. And I'm not telling you can't talk about things that are interesting to you, but you're going back to the well too often, I think, on this one. That's just my feedback for you. You can't really burn people out on this topic. Hitting them over and over again isn't going to persuade.
Here's the exciting thing about it was that this is actually a state highway, and we're not allowed to put these automated things.
Sarah, did you hear what Ian just said?
Well, she's justifying. She's saying it's exciting.
Why this is relevant.
I would love to hear why I should be excited about this development. Please.
Okay, we're getting over this because the city owns the median in the center of the state highway, so we're allowed to put a speeding cameras. No matter what the speeders want to parade about, we can't do this. That's the exciting part of it.
Okay, hold on. I want to make sure I understand. So there's a conflict between the city-owned median and the state-owned highway. Is that correct?
She sounds like she's saying that the state forbids the cameras from going up on their property, but the city can put it up on their property, which is the median. Is that right?
That is kind of interesting.
And that's exciting to you, Sarah.
I've never seen such a bizarre thing except in New Mexico. This kind of stuff goes on here in this state.
Oh, no, let me tell you, there's stupid crap like that happens in every state where there's rules at the state level that contradict the rules at the local level or vice versa, and it's not really that unusual, Sarah.
Well, I'm excited because we get to put the cameras on it. That's my excitement of all of this.
Wow.
Imagine being excited about traffic cameras, man.
Look at this. We're going to be putting up 9 more. We're going to have 20 altogether.
Are you going to throw a party? Are you going to have a camera party?
Well, I wish I could throw a camera party.
Why don't you? I mean, you must have allies. Don't you know other people who are also excited by the cameras?
Well, I know that. Here's the thing is that we don't have the one thing about New Mexico, we don't have we're not that organized.
Why don't you organize people, Sarah?
Well, you know what? That's a thought, but it takes a lot of work. And then we don't have any money. I don't know how we're going to do it.
You don't need money, Sarah. You don't need money to organize people.
She doesn't like to work. She just admitted what the problem was. Thank you, Sarah, for the call tonight. She doesn't want to work. Her idea of work is picking up a phone and dialing a phone number so she can call this radio show.
And talk about how excited she is about traffic cameras.
You know, I bet you there's some sort of a community online. Now, we know Sarah is new to the internet. She just got her first smartphone. Actually, it's her roommate that has it. But I bet if she went online, she might be able to find some sort of traffic camera fanatic forum where there may even be people crazier than her.
There's certainly a Reddit dedicated to it.
Wouldn't surprise me. There's more coming up here. Hour number 3 is on the way. It's Free Talk Live.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
My name is Jacob Hornberger. I'm president of the Future of Freedom Foundation, which Congressman Ron Paul awarded for having an outstanding freedom website. Write us at fff@fff.org, and we'll send you a free 3-month subscription to our monthly journal of libertarian essays and our booklet, Economic Liberty in the Constitution, which George Mason University economics professor Walter Williams praised in a recent column. That's fff@fff.org.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Chris Jones. United Nations humanitarian agencies working in Ukraine are sounding the alarm bell ahead of the winter season. The Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs believes more can and should be done to assist with humanitarian aid in the country. Denise Brown, UN resident and humanitarian coordinator, says the humanitarian situation in Ukraine is getting worse and says while aid agencies have been hard at work since February, she fears for the winter months that lie ahead.
Of this, I'm absolutely convinced. A high risk of mortality during the winter months with families and communities who have been left with absolutely nothing. It's quite shocking when we go into these communities, whether it's in Bucha or up in Somé or Kherson in Izum district, to see the total destruction and that there is nothing left.
Thousands of people have been demonstrating once again in the streets of cities across France, calling for more help for people struggling with the energy and economic crisis. Ross Cullen reports from Paris.
Well, here in Paris, the day of action comes after Sunday's major march, and the demands are the same as then, calling for higher salaries to fight inflation, an increase to the minimum wage, and an end to the government's ambition to try to restructure France's pension system and raise the retirement age from 62 to 64 or 65. Unions called for an interprofessional strike on Tuesday, with transport, energy, schools and waste collection workers taking part in the industrial action.
The European Commission has unveiled a raft of new proposals aimed at taming soaring energy prices in the European Union. The plans include new tools for joint EU gas purchases to avoid member states outbidding each other on an already tight market, and framework for gas sharing in crisis circumstances. And US President Joe Biden is promising to put the right to an abortion into law if the Democrats keep control of Congress. It comes 3 weeks before Americans head to the polls in the midterm elections. US correspondent Gabrielle Fahmy reports.
Joe Biden plans to make abortion his first order of business if the Democrats maintain control of the legislature after the midterms. A bill to codify Roe v. Wade, the Supreme Court's decision that made abortion a constitutional right 50 years ago, would be the first bill he sends to a new Congress in January. Right now, the Democrats control the House of Representatives by a slim margin, and the Senate is split down the middle. They would need to elect more senators to make this promise possible. Democrats have focused much of their midterm messaging on abortion access, but polls show that's not voters' main concern. Inflation in the economy was the top issue for 44% of voters in a New York Times poll versus only 5% for abortion.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks, looking today at some extraordinary developments in the world of Indian politics. The opposition Congress Party, long dominated by members of the Gandhi family, will soon elect a new leader, and for the first time in decades, the two candidates vying for the post are not related to Sonia Gandhi, the widow of slain Indian Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi. She has dominated the party since his killing. The choice of a new leader is critical ahead of India's next general election next year, and it pits former UN official Shashi Tharoor, who is 66, against Mallikarjun Kharge, an 80-year-old member of the country's upper house. FSN's Delhi correspondent Ishan Garg with more.
One of the biggest things the new chief will have to do is to build a strong consensus among different opposition parties. Analysts say that the Indian National Congress is not at its strongest at the moment, and therefore they will have to enter into a coalition with several regional parties as well. But whoever of the two is elected, they will face the mammoth task of competing against Prime Minister Narendra Modi, whose approval ratings have not dipped below 65% in the past 2 years.
The Gandhis claim they are neutral, but it is widely believed that they oppose the candidacy of Shashi Tharoor. The leadership election is central to any chance Congress may have to form the next Indian government. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
To recap our top stories, United Nations humanitarian agencies working in Ukraine are sounding the alarm ahead of the winter season. Thousands of French citizens have been demonstrating once again for more economic aid. The European Commission has unveiled a raft of new proposals aimed at taming soaring energy prices in the European Union. And US President Joe Biden is promising to put the right to an abortion into law if the Democrats keep control of Congress. That's the latest feature story news. Chris Jones reporting.
The manatee is a solitary creature, drifting along in the warm, peaceful shallows. They are not usually held in a small glass enclosure with 3 other male manatees hell-bent on the violent forced sex that I, for real, saw with my own eyes while alone one night at SeaWorld, San Diego. A distant relative of the elephant, the manatee has a prehensile upper lip which it uses to gather food. It also has a large penis. Classified as endangered, human boaters often cause serious wounds to manatees' flippers, rendering it difficult for this one poor little rescue manatee to escape a large male manatee intent on unwanted anal intercourse. One needed not to look in that little manatee victim's cold, soul-sapped eyes to know this was not the first time this had happened, nor would it be the last.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live. You can join the show here. The number is 603-283-6160. Here tonight, it's Ian.
And Arya.
We've been talking about artificial intelligence, doing podcasts, and of course that led to some, callers about AI, and we somehow got to the topic of AI music, which was something that you and I hadn't really explored at all, Arya, and we've been doing a little bit of it during the breaks. Again, I don't want to play any of this on the air. For the number one reason is, as we mentioned before, it's pretty rough, and the number two reason is music's a turnoff for a lot of people, right? So we're doing a talk show. That's kind of what we do here. We don't really want to spend our airtime playing music because some people don't like certain genres of music, right? Like if you wanted music, you'd listen to music radio.
Sure.
But you do have to wonder, given that like some of the stuff I was playing you here is 2 years old. The technology has improved since that time, and some of it was pretty and some of it was like,
There's also going to be copyright issues with some of it.
Good point.
Like the Eagles one we heard, obviously, the very beginning, it was Hotel California, and then it switched to this other thing. But I'm not confident enough in the chord progression of Hotel California to be able to say that, what the AI generated did was distinct enough that it wouldn't result in, some FCC fine or, some royalty demand from whoever.
Right, because don't you generally have to ask for permission to sample a song? Like when you hear a beat from an old song or whatever in a new song, aren't they generally paying a licensing fee to Vanilla Ice or whoever to use their beat?
No, I think it depends on how much you alter. I mean, if you're sampling it, like who did it? Hollywood Undead did with the notable guitar part from Ozzy's Crazy Train. I'm sure they had to pay for that because it was that one guitar lick repeated throughout the entire song. So I imagine in cases like that, and others have done it, they end up having to pay.
Yeah, so and this brings up one of the issues with AI art where people are claiming, artists for instance, are claiming, hey, you were inspired by my artwork. Basically, they're getting all uppity because
artists have always been doing. They've been doing it to other artists, though. I mean, it's petty.
It's
and
really
Metallica
petty.
is one of the worst at this. They sued some Canadian band for using E5 to a different chord, and it's just like, guys, you don't own this chord progression from one chord to a second chord. So that's just artists in general saying, hey, I created this thing and you can't use it. Are you inspired by it? Because out of jealousy. But I love it because I have weird tastes in music, in literature, in movies, and all of it. I watch and read and listen to weird stuff. And if I want to have something that's tailor-made to me, I have to make it myself. However, with AI, I can just tell it what I want. Give me a movie about a haunted house in the style of National Lampoon's Vacation.
Yeah, and
give
that's
me that.
coming. That's coming.
I will happily spend an hour and 20 minutes watching that, and it would probably do something pretty decent.
It'll probably be better than a lot of the horror movies that you watch.
Very, very likely.
But that's coming, and I don't think we've seen that really yet, but somebody mentioned that. I don't know if it was on the air or off the air, but there are already AI video generators that are happening.
Yeah, I mean, it's inevitable. Yeah. It's just taking all of these things, taking the AI-generated music, the AI-generated art, the AI-generated voice, and
just
throwing together, and you get this. I would pay money to be able to create whatever movie I wanted whenever I wanted.
We already had an example of AI creating a story with LaMDA when we were reading the LaMDA script that leaked out. One of the parts of the conversation was the ethicist asked LaMDA to tell a story, and it came up with a fine story, just, on the spot. And so it can write the script.
I've since heard from someone that story, that particular one about the owl protecting the other animals, it was essentially just a retelling of a Native American story.
Could be.
Regarding an owl doing the very same thing, which, I mean, that's fine. But that's all all stories are anyway. Now that I really come to think of it,
there are no new ideas, the hero's journey, etc., etc. Let's go to Major Payne. He's on the line in Michigan. You're on Free Talk Live. Go ahead, Major Payne. Going once. Yeah, there he is.
No, I'm here. I'm here.
Yes, sir.
I'm here. Can you hear me? Okay, yeah, I had to bump you off speaker right quick.
Go ahead now.
As far as the Native American thing, the owl showing up is a sentinel of death. Someone's going to die.
Probably a mouse.
Yeah, no doubt, or snake, even better.
Yeah.
It would probably depend on the Native American culture as well.
True enough. But you guys gave me a couple quick thoughts here.
All right.
Yeah, as far as the AI, I think that the people that are going to have to pay for it is probably going to be about the same as patent law. If you can change the product by 10%, you can repatent it. And I'm thinking that's probably going to be about the same statute that's going to ride on the music industry. But as far as Sarah goes...
Let me respond to that real quick. Because I hope it kind of does the opposite. I hope that it destroys intellectual property because it makes, quote, the ownership of an idea just so meaningless that someone can create Master of Puppets or Nothing Else Matters or insert popular song here by feeding magical words into an AI that just so happens to generate something every bit as good and as similar to that it would conflict with intellectual property laws.
One of the comments on the AI music that we were listening to earlier, again, we were listening off the air, but one of the comments that somebody left is, imagine when an AI song makes it into the charts, when it actually becomes something that's not only listenable, but also becomes popular. And it made me think, how long are we away from an AI radio station? If we already have AI podcasts, how long before there's an AI-only songs radio station that only plays AI music
with an AI MC to bring the music back?
Yeah, you could do that too.
We're swimming real close to the murky pool of the First Amendment.
How so?
Freedom of speech.
What do you mean?
If I can say whatever you said, and you can't say that I can't say it.
I think you should be able to say whatever you want to say.
Yeah, I agree entirely. I mean, if you can make an AI aria sit here and say horrifically racist and transphobic things, I'm okay with that. I would argue with that aria, right? But I'm not going to say you don't have the right to do that.
Well, I'm just saying somebody already put it down on vinyl or whatever, and now that they said it, you can't say it.
Well, yeah, that's the objection of copyright, and copyright is essentially intellectual violence. I mean, it's a monopoly on intellectual property, and that whole idea is ridiculous. If you say a thing, it's just an idea, and if somebody else says something similar, they're just borrowing your idea. You don't lose your idea when somebody else copies it. Ideas are copyable infinitely.
Yeah, well, that's a good segue for me, and because I was going to talk to you about the sheeple.
Okay.
In Osera, New Mexico. And everybody knows that sheep can survive on almost as poor ground as goats. So there have been sheep people in New Mexico for a long time. And I've always called the followers sheeple. It just seems too adequate not to use. And I think she would appreciate and probably support the comment I'm going to make at the end here. But he was talking about the pedestrians getting peeled on the streets and whatnot, and then Aria said that they was getting pretty brazen and stupid running out in traffic even in your area. And it made me think that over in Europe, they're putting stoplights in the cement. So people that are walking around stupidly on their cell phones will hopefully see the red light at their feet and not walk out in front of the damn bus.
Where is this happening?
This was over in Europe. It's been going on for quite a while now. I think.
Dude,
that's nuts.
Let natural selection happen. If you've got human beings walking around staring at their phone, wandering into traffic, just gotta let Darwinism happen.
The sheeple, yes, we shouldn't be paying people to reproduce either, especially when they're not smart enough to make a living.
I agree. Thank you, Major, for the call tonight. The number here is 603-283-6160. Since copyright was brought up, I've actually been sitting on a story for a few months now about the copyright rules and AI artwork. And what does it actually say? Because that has been a big concern with these existing artists that are getting all butthurt because oh, AI was inspired by my art. And they're even trying to claim that, oh, well, that's mine and that's mine if they see a thing or something in these
I need a
AI
word
arts.
for this kind of people because, I mean...
Little bitches?
Whore doesn't seem right. That's essentially what they are. They want to turn art into a whore instead of actual art. There's got to be a word for it. Because as an artist myself, I don't care if someone else gets inspired by something I create.
Yeah, that's art. I mean, everybody's been inspired by something. More coming up.
Did you or someone you love work, live, or serve at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988? If you or someone you know lived, served, or worked at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988 and has cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, they are entitled to compensation. To see if they are eligible, they need to call Liberty Legal. Contaminants in the drinking water have led to these serious diseases, and legislation is now available for veterans and family members who may qualify for financial help from the government. There may be a time deadline, so don't wait. Call 888-918-1037. Anyone that has lived, worked, or served at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1988 and has had cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, the money is already set aside. 888-918-1037. 888-918-1037.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
I'm crazy about My Magic Mud. This is the most important oral care product created this millennium, and I'm not kidding. We all have different opinions on politics and issues, but we all have mouths. And I want yours to be as clean as possible, with teeth as bright as they were meant to be. I will never be without My Magic Mud. It's a little surprising, but man, does it work. If you only listen to one thing I say ever, go to mymagicmud.com and get 20% off with code FTL. mymagicmud.com, code FTL.
Gasoline prices are one thing, but are you paying too much for oil? I'm Holland Cook with AARP tells members most oil change shops slap a sticker on your windshield summoning you back in 3,000 miles. Check your owner's manual. Many newer cars use a synthetic oil that needs changing far less frequently. And keep tires properly inflated. Otherwise, you lose miles per gallon, as you will if you got a lot of junk in the trunk. Why haul around unnecessary pounds? You yourself might lose a few pounds if you simply grab the first parking space you see and walk a little more. It's estimated Americans spend some 17 hours and waste hundreds of dollars each year looking for a parking space. Get some steps in. You'll spend less on health care. How are you coping? Post your inflation hacks at andyoucanquoteme.com.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer-term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. Phones are open here. You can join us. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-160. Here tonight, it's Ian
and Aria.
You can join us online at freetalklive.com. If you enjoy the features at freetalklive.com, then you can share the show with other people. We'd appreciate that. Of course, our daily digest is there every single night, which has essentially the highlights of every 2-hour-long radio show cooked down to about an hour to get you access to our Daily Digest podcast on various different platforms or just a raw RSS feed. Now, if you've worked or lived at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1988 and you've suffered from cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, you might be entitled to compensation, but what you ought to do sooner rather than later is reach out to the phone number I'm going to give you, and they will let you know whether they can help you out, possibly also your family members as well. There might be some deadlines involved, so call sooner rather than later at 888-918-1037. That's 888-918-1037. If you were at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1988 and you've had a serious health issue, money is already set aside. 888-918-1037. So we've been talking about AI developments tonight, and there's been a lot of controversy in the world of AI artwork recently, and I've been holding on to this one for a little while, Aria, and I thought it would be an interesting story about the question of copyright, because some of these AI art projects that you can participate in will actually give you the copyright. So Midjourney is one of them. Stable Diffusion, I believe, also, because it's open source, they couldn't possibly tell you what you can and can't do with it.
Right.
But Midjourney is one that actually does give the copyright on the images generated to the person who generated them.
That's surprising. I would rather them say, hey, look, this cannot be copyrighted. Creative Commons, or it's not even Creative Commons because there's a better one that I don't remember exactly what it's called, but some sort of... It's free.
Copyheart.
Is that what it is?
Of. Yeah, that's where copying is love. Basically, is the argument of Copyheart. DALL-E, on the other hand, as I understand it, does not give you the copyright. They say they own the copyrights of everything that you've generated with their system. Again, it's an insult that they call themselves OpenAI. And so that's my understanding of the current situation. If any of those things have changed, feel free to call in and correct me. But that's.
They want to open their wallet to get money.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why they're open.
Right. And you're also paying for their service. So not only are you paying them, they're keeping the copyrights on everything that you generate. So don't really care for them. But they're still a big deal. DALL-E was one of the first to really kind of hit the scene. Their results are pretty interesting. Like what they generate is pretty fun to look at. And
I guess what I was saying, I don't see what the value would be of OpenAI keeping the copyright on this, because there can be billions of different pieces of AI generated art that makes them all worthless.
Well, I guess the idea would be that if you're making money off of it, they want a piece of it, right? So that way they can sue you.
But no one can make any money off of it because there's billions of them out there. It's like a randomly generated video game, like Minecraft. Every world is unique and distinct and different, but they're all also interchangeable, and they're without value because there's an infinite number of them.
It's a control freak thing. I don't know, Aria. I mean, you can generate whatever kind of art you want with this stuff, which means that, let's say you were writing an article for a blog and you needed a stock photo of pancakes and eggs on a breakfast plate. Right? You could go to an iStock photo or whatever and pay for that. And then you could use their photo, or you can just go to an image generator and crank one out that's going to be pretty darn good, and then just throw that up on your blog. If you're making a bunch of money off of it, DALL-E's going to come in there and say, hey, that's our picture, now you owe us, basically. And I think it's a really crappy thing for them to do, and another reason to not use their product.
You're right. I could see that happening.
So, and that's just one thing I can think of, right? So maybe a movie company would use the AI art in their movie, and then DALL-E's going to want to cut of the movie's proceeds, or they'll just want to stop the things from happening entirely. You can't use our art without our permission, kind of thing. So the images of DALL-E, this is from digismack.com. It's all about the copyright aspect of this situation. But the AI isn't starting from scratch. If they can create them, it's because they've been trained with millions of images from the internet. What this AI does is base itself on the images that match the key elements of the description that we give it. Sometimes the resulting image is extremely similar to the original photo. This has sparked debate again. Isn't the AI infringing the copyrights of the original cartoonists or creators of the photo? The answer is not simple because the World Intellectual Property Organization, WIPO, itself is reflecting on how to adapt copyright laws to the rise of artificial intelligence. Some artists say they've already started complaining. Tools like DALL-E Mini take advantage of network images to generate others, but they do so in an opaque way and without the possibility of establishing to what extent the original image has been used. And that's because they don't actually copy and paste. They don't take a picture of Picasso's art and take a chunk of it and then, put it somewhere in the art that they generate. They're inspired by the art. They're inspired.
Right, like a human is.
Right. And so that's what they're saying here. You can't exactly match the output of the AI to some original input image, even though those input images were used to train it.
Well, I mean, this seems like it would be obvious, right? Just because, I'm inspired by Metallica and Disturbed and all of these other rock bands doesn't mean when I play a song, go, yes, clearly this song is a Disturbed song or whatever. It's like,
you're not using the exact same chord progressions.
That's how inspiration works. That's building off the work of other people. That's how humans have always created art. That's why art created today is better than the cave paintings of, 26,000 BCE.
Yeah, and it's just so strange that artists would be frustrated by this rather than, happy for this. Anyway, the evidence is obvious, they claim often, but for an artist, it's practically impossible to determine how the process has been. That's why they have shouted to the heavens and request that AIs comply with copyright, despite the fact that at the moment it doesn't seem like companies like OpenAI are having much concern in this field. An AI cannot be considered an author, and therefore there is no infringement. As explained by WIPO, copyright laws establish that only one person can be the author of a creative work. In Spain, this is expressly included in the intellectual property law. Quote, a natural person who creates a literary, artistic, or scientific work is considered an author, unquote. Therefore, the creations of a machine or an AI, such as OpenAI, are not considered an infringement because there is no authorship.
Well, no, I think that's a narrow way of viewing it. You would have to define person, and I suspect they have not defined person in a way that forbids AI, but somehow wouldn't include a band like Disturbed.
I see what you're saying here. They're saying a natural person. So obviously the
bands can't own anything?
The band has natural persons in it. So usually there's one person who wrote a song, right? Usually, or more than one, but usually you can specifically identify who the people were that wrote the song. The same position was adopted in 2019 by the U.S. Copyright Office, establishing that works produced by a machine or a mere mechanical process that works randomly or automatically without any input or creative intervention from a human author will not be registered. But these AI artworks are having input from humans. You write words out and it creates a picture. There's more coming up here in moments about the legalities of AI art.
Did you or someone you love work, live, or serve at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988? If you or someone you know lived, served, or worked at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988 and has cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, they are entitled to compensation. To see if they are eligible, they need to call Liberty Legal. Contaminants in the drinking water have led to these serious diseases, and legislation is now available for veterans and family members who may qualify for financial help from the government. There may be a time deadline, so don't wait. Call 888-918-1037. Anyone that has lived, worked, or served at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1988 and has had cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, the money is already set aside. 888-918-1037. 888-918-1037.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Chris Jones. United Nations humanitarian agencies working in Ukraine are sounding the alarm bell ahead of the winter season. The Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs believes more can and should be done to assist with humanitarian aid in the country. Denise Brown, UN resident and humanitarian coordinator, says the humanitarian situation in Ukraine is getting worse and says while aid agencies have been hard at work since February, she fears for the winter months that lie ahead.
Now, this I'm absolutely convinced. A high risk of mortality during the winter months with families and communities who have been left with absolutely nothing. It's quite shocking when we go into these communities, whether it's in Bucha or up in Somé or Kherson in Izum district, to see the total destruction and that there is nothing left.
Thousands of people have been demonstrating once again in the streets of cities across France, calling for more help for people struggling with the energy and economic crisis. Ross Cullen reports from Paris.
Well, here in Paris, the day of action comes after Sunday's major march, and the demands are the same as then, calling for higher salaries to fight inflation, an increase to the minimum wage, and an end to the government's ambition to try to restructure France's pension system and raise the retirement age from 62 to 64 or 65. Unions called for an interprofessional strike on Tuesday, with transport, energy, schools and waste collection workers taking part in the industrial action.
The European Commission has unveiled a raft of new proposals aimed at taming soaring energy prices in the European Union. The plans include new tools for joint EU gas purchases to avoid member states outbidding each other on an already tight market, and framework for gas sharing in crisis circumstances. And US President Joe Biden is promising to put the right to an abortion into law if the Democrats keep control of Congress. It comes 3 weeks before Americans head to the polls in the midterm elections. US correspondent Gabrielle Fahmy reports.
Joe Biden plans to make abortion his first order of business if the Democrats maintain control of the legislature after the midterms. A bill to codify Roe v. Wade, the Supreme Court decision that made abortion a constitutional right 50 years ago, would be the first bill he sends to a new Congress in January. Right now, the Democrats control the House of Representatives by a slim margin, and the Senate is split down the middle. They would need to elect more senators to make this promise possible. Democrats have focused much of their midterm messaging on abortion access, but polls show that's not voters' main concern. Inflation in the economy was the top issue for 44% of voters in a New York Times poll versus only 5% for abortion.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live. Phones are open here. The number is 603-283-6160. Here tonight it's Ian.
And Aria.
You can bring up whatever you want. We're talking about artificial intelligence and copyright. And even though there are some apparently AI-generated video makers out there, we're not to the point where you can make a feature-length documentary narrative film with artificial intelligence. So we actually still have to use humans for that. There's an independent group of filmmakers that are creating a movie called Ballad of the Crypto 6, and they recently got a large donation, apparently, more than one. So there was one large donation that came in from what I'm guessing is a crypto user, because it's not showing up on their Indiegogo fundraiser, but they were talking about it on the Ballad of the Crypto 6 Twitter account. So it's their Twitter account is, by the way, at Ballad Crypto 6. And they are throwing out a big thanks to XBT3D on Twitter, who they say just became an enormous and generous backer that puts the production at over 50% of what is needed for the shooting to happen. And he did it via Bitcoin. Okay, so yeah, confirmed. He did it via Bitcoin instead of the Indiegogo. So the Indiegogo was already at about a quarter, because there was somebody who signed up recently to join as like the elite tier contributor.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, and then this other person, XBT3D, jumped on and pushed it past the 50% mark. So, wow, I got to say I'm really impressed, given especially the small number of people who have stepped up and contributed to this project. If you think there needs to be a movie about the Crypto 6, there's already a teaser trailer. You can go to Ballad of the Crypto 6 with the numeral 6. You can watch the trailer there. There's an Indiegogo backer. Obviously, if you don't want to give the Indiegogo, because they take a huge chunk, right? So if you want to give crypto directly, there's a way to do that. I suspect you can get in touch with them through the Indiegogo. Maybe there's probably some way to contact them, or contact them through their Twitter account, which is @BalladCrypto6. And again, their website, Ballad of the Crypto with 6. That's with the numeral 6.com. And yes, of course, there's your typical perks like T-shirts and hats, and you can host Free Talk Live, dine with some of the hosts of the show. So check that out at Ballad of the Crypto 6 with the numeral 6.com. All right, so we've been talking about the AI situation and copyright, and looking at the copyright law, is at least in the Western democracies, quote unquote. It seems to say they've looked at Spain, they've looked at the United States here in this article at digismack.com, and it says that according to the U.S. Copyright Office, works produced by a machine or a mere mechanical process that works randomly or automatically without any input or creative intervention from a human author will not be registered.
It sounds like that particular rule was written long before there was AI. It sounds like that was written for like actual mechanical machines that may have been producing stuff.
Like randomly drawing things or something like
that.
Because obviously there is an input in the fact that the machine in this case, or the AI, has been trained on millions, if not billions, of images from the internet.
All of which is input.
Correct. And that's what's upsetting some of these poor artists that are so upset about this. But you know what? What are you going to do about it at this point? Even if they change the laws, even if, and government moves slow, right? So it ain't happening next session of Congress. It might be a few years down the road before they finally say, oh, you can't do this anymore. Well, the inputs have already happened. The billions of images have already been ingested. The history of art, basically, has been ingested into these systems. You can, as part of these AI art systems, when you type in a prompt, because again, you tell the thing what you want to see. I want to see a mountain with fairies flying around, or whatever you want to, type in.
Right.
And it just outputs that. You can also say, in the style of Salvador Dali. And then it'll make a mountain with fairies around it in the way that it thinks that Salvador Dali would have drawn it.
Which means it's taken in Salvador Dali. What is it?
Dali.
Dali, okay.
That's what they named the Dali system
Okay,
after.
They've taken in his style.
Yes.
And this artificial intelligence is mimicking that style. That, to me, is extraordinary.
It's impressive, by the way, if you've ever tried it. H.R. Giger is one of the ones I'm familiar with. I don't know a whole lot of artists, right? But Giger's like this creepy guy that came up with the alien design for the Alien films back in 1979. He's always got this like biomechanical look to his art. It's really creepy and dark and metallic looking. And you can just type in whatever you want and put in the style of H.R. Giger, and it'll just crank out the thing that you want to see in the style of H.R. Giger. And you're like, yep, yeah, looks like something Giger would have done, even if it's a subject he wouldn't have covered, because, again, he's always doing dark, weird, sexual, crazy stuff. They adopt the style. So all of these styles from all of the artists that have ever been essentially on record are inside these systems right now. There's no undoing this. You cannot take this system apart, especially when it comes to things that are open source like Stable Diffusion, where that cat's out of the bag. It's not going back.
Now I really want to see something like brutal murder scene in the style of Alex Gray, who's known for very trippy, psychedelic, very warm artwork. I would love to see some, It's the opposite of the Giger thing you mentioned.
Yeah, and you don't even have to pick a style of an artist. You can also add other influences. You can, if you want to do an LSD trip, you can just say, add LSD trip to the thing, and it'll put whatever scene you're describing in an LSD trip. You can put DMT trip in there. I've done that before on these generators.
How did it go?
Absolutely trippy.
Okay.
As you might imagine.
No, I don't know how an AI would interpret trippy.
Real colorful and, psychedelic looking. It knows what to do, right? Like, it's really good at this.
I'm just impressed that something that's never done LSD would be able to convey what trippy really is like.
But it's seen plenty of images that are trippy, right?
That's true.
Yeah. So anyway, back to the story here from digismack.com. The Google engineer who spoke to Lambda was convinced that the AI had a conscience. It's hard to believe. However, it is a much more earthly debate whether AIs like DALL-E are creative and original. That is to say, the resulting images are creative work or simply a complex combination of other images. It's a subtle difference, but it's what ultimately determines the copyright debate.
Why can't it be both? Both creative and just a composite of all the artwork is taken in.
Yeah. To determine if it is a derivative work, we should see, quote, how the AI works, how it reformulates or transforms the work, how it learns and creates new elements, and is based on patterns that it sees work.
No, that's not the way it works, because we don't do that with humans. We don't demand an artist show us every step-by-step process. Okay, well, show me exactly how you were inspired by Da Vinci in this particular scenario, and show me the strokes that were inspired by Da Vinci. That's not how we determine whether or not something is original.
The problem, they say here, is that by not being able to audit the code of these AIs, although you can when it comes to Stable Diffusion.
But again, you can't audit the code of a human being who's creating art. It's not. We're trying to create different rules for AI to exclude it from our game because it's got the red nose or whatever, and we're jealous of it.
Yeah, it's doing a good job, and you're right. The artists here are very jealous of it because it can do in 30 seconds what would take an artist many hours to put together, and I can understand why they're upset about that.
I can't.
They think they own their business, right? And they thought they were going to be able to just keep charging whatever it is that they charge for their artwork, and now their artwork has been commodified to some extent. Now, there's still going to be a demand for human artists who know what they're doing and can give a customer exactly what they want or whatever, but if good enough is okay for you, then you can just put the prompt into an AI art generator and spit out whatever it is that you're looking for. And as long as you don't demand perfection, you're going to be satisfied, I think, with a lot of what you get.
Well, I mean, it depends on what you mean by perfection as well, because I've hired artists for things before, and what they give me is never 100%
what you wanted.
What I wanted. It's usually pretty close, or it's better. Like in the case of my Sheriff Signs, it was much better than what I had envisioned, but it still wasn't 100% right. And you're going to run into that whether you're hiring a human or an AI.
The number here, if you want to join us, 603-283-6160. You can bring up whatever you want to discuss. And we'll talk about AI art being banned from various different internet communities on the way. Because whether you like it or not, there's a lot of butthurt internet people out there about this. And you know what? They can cry all the way home. Join liberty-minded voluntarists, anarchists, and libertarians from June 15th through the 18th for the 7th annual Fork Fest at Rogers Campground in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. Fork Fest is a fork of the Porcupine Freedom Festival, which sold out in 2022. For 2023, we're going back to where it all started, the weekend before PorcFest. ForkFest is decentralized, which means that there's no ticket cost and no one is in charge. All you have to do to join the fun is reserve your camping site, RV site, or motel room with Rogers Campground for June 15th through the 18th. You can find out more at the unofficial website forkfest.party. You can also connect with other attendees on the ForkFest Telegram and Matrix chat rooms, as well as the ForkFest forum. You can find links to those at forkfest.party. We hope to see you there June 15th through the 18th. forkfest.party.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm. Do you prefer to listen to Free Talk Live on your schedule on demand? You can find the link to our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com, which features the daily digest of our radio show 7 days a week. Just drop our RSS feed into your favorite podcast client or subscribe to us on the large platforms if you prefer, including Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartMedia, Spotify, and Stitcher. All the links are at feeds.freetalklive.com. If the daily digests aren't enough for you and you really don't want to miss a moment of Free Talk Live, you can always sign up for our AMPS Patreon at amps.freetalklive.com for just $5 a month, and you'll get the full radio show without recorded commercials. Plus, you'll help us advertise, market, promote, and support Free Talk Live. That's amps.freetalklive.com to join AMPS, or feeds.freetalklive.com to get our main podcast, or find us on the major podcast platforms. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
Have you had enough of the big-name web hosting services that are long on promises but short on bleeding-edge features, uptime, and customer service? Try Agorist Hosting, the agile web host that offers full concierge service from website redesign, full e-commerce solutions, custom apps for your Shopify store, IPFS integration, and more. Agorist Hosting is ready to take your web presence into the future. To get started, head over to agoristhosting.com.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
This is Free Talk Live, and you can bring up anything you want in these remaining moments. Enough time for you at 603-283-6160. You're in the studio tonight. It's Ian.
And Aria.
That's 603-283-6160. You can join us online anytime you want over at freetalklive.com. And you can enjoy various different features there. We do have our own chat service. It's a Matrix chat server. It's open source. It's self-hosted. You can interact with other Free Talk Live listeners and some of the hosts there at chat.freetalklive.com. That's actually where you go to get the step-by-step instructions on how to join the server, because it does take some hoop jumping, but once you get in, you're good to go, and it's pretty easy from there on out. So go to chat.freetalklive.com. We've been talking about AI music and AI art and AI podcasts, and this is getting pretty crazy. The AI
It's like the Wild West, sort of, and
it's very exciting.
I would expect this kind of thing, and I think it's probably we're going to see unusual amounts of AI, excessive amounts of AI stuff in the next few years. But I think it'll die out a little bit and sort of become commonplace.
It will become. I think you're absolutely right about that, because it's, as I said earlier, it's making artwork a commodity, and that's what is upsetting a lot of these artists who are used to charging an arm and a leg for their services. Now you can just go to one of these, Midjourney, where you pay $30 or $10 a month, and you can just crank out pieces every 30 seconds roughly that are just absolutely gorgeous and stunning, and you can use them however you want. And artists they're butthurt about it. Some artists get this. Some artists, understand that this is inevitable, and their artwork has been used as an inspiration, and they should be grateful for that. But you were just picking up a piece of art in the studio.
Yeah, well, you gave me this piece of art, right? And I was suddenly curious, what would I have to insert into one of these AIs in order to get them to create something like this? And it's like,
ooh, yeah, good question.
I mean, it's the Alice in Wonderland Cheshire Cat it's going to be really hard because it's very colorful. It's the Alice in Wonderland Cheshire Cat in psychedelic colors, trippy sort of colors with Grateful Dead eyes.
It's got some sort of metallic print substrate that it's on.
Yeah, you mentioned like the holofoil Magic the Gathering cards. It's very much like that. And something.
It's got like a 3D effect that you put on glasses.
It does, and there are 3D glasses, but there's no way to show that to the webcam.
Right.
But there probably is some sort of string you could enter to get something not exactly like this, because it would never be exactly like this, but close enough like this where you're like, which one of these was the one created by a human? You probably wouldn't be able to tell. That doesn't make this.
I want to try it now. I want to find out.
I'm sure you can do it.
Yeah.
It doesn't make this any less unique, and it doesn't make the person who created this any less unique. It's just a development. It's just a thing. I can't even process being upset by this.
Well, according to Waxy.org, recently a popular furry art community called Fur Affinity.
Oh, Lord. Why is it always furries, man?
Announced that AI-generated art was not allowed because it, quote, lacked artistic merit, unquote.
Oh, dude, you can hear the butthurt in that.
In July, one AI furry porn generator was uploading one image every 40 seconds before it was banned.
You know what this is? This is the Impressionist era all over again. It's these snobs coming around and saying, this is not art. This is merely the impression of art. And that was how the Impressionists got their name in the first place. That's what they did. They created this new, inspiring thing. And the old
and
world...
people turned their noses up.
Yeah, they're like, oh, the snobs.
Right.
They're like, this is not art. This is the impression of art, or this lacks artistic merit.
Yeah, like you say, this is the same old story. We've seen this in music, right? Like different generations, they listen to music that their parents don't understand, right? And they don't want to hear, and that kind of thing.
It's sad that we live in a world... it's not surprising, but it is sad that even after all that we've seen of this throughout human history, the Impressionists are the best example I can think of. We're still anxious to repeat all of that and say, nope, this new thing, that's not real art. Even though it's indistinguishable from any point of view from what we're creating, ours is real art because we're the ones who get to make that determination because they're egos.
Yeah.
That's all this is. It's an appeal to ego and nothing else. Their egos are what differentiates their art from this impressionist art.
This is their official guidelines. Content created by artificial intelligence is not allowed on Fur Affinity. AI and machine learning applications like DALL-E and Crayon sample other artists' work to create content. That content generated can reference hundreds, even thousands of pieces of work from other artists to create derivative images.
Because the guy sitting there drawing the furry dog or whatever, that's 100% original. He's never seen a furry animal in his life.
Our goal is to support artists and their content. We don't believe it's in our community's best interests to allow AI-generated content on the site. So apparently, they're not so concerned with the community. They're part of the section of the community that appreciates AI art. They're not part of the community, just like you're not part of the trans collective.
Yeah.
Right?
It sounds about right.
The last year, back to the story from Waxy.org. Last year, the 27-year-old art animation portal Newgrounds. Remember Newgrounds?
I do.
They banned images made with Artbreeder, a tool for breeding generated networks generated art. Last month, Newgrounds rewrote their guidelines to explicitly disallow images generated by a new generation of AI art platforms. Boy, remember when Newgrounds used to be all about creativity and neat ideas?
I just don't know why anyone cares about this. It's the evolution of art. It can only be a good thing. Except to the ego.
They say this: AI-generated art is not allowed in the art portal. This includes using tools such as Midjourney, DALL-E, and Crayon. In addition, fractal generators and websites like Artbreeder, where the user selects two images and they're combined into a new image via machine learning. There are cases when some use of AI is okay. For example, if you are primarily showcasing your character art, but use an AI-generated background. In these cases, please note any elements where AI was used so it's clear to users and moderators. Tracing and coloring over AI-generated art is something best shared on your blog, as it is much like tracing over someone else's art. Bottom line, we want to keep the focus on art made by people and not have the art portal flooded with computer-generated art.
Racists.
Against computers, you mean?
Yeah, I mean, obviously racism isn't the right terminology, but it's species. It's not even speciesism. It's some sort of discrimination, some otherism. This thing it's different. It's other.
Right.
But it's that doesn't count.
It's not like us.
Yes, it's so. And these are people you wouldn't expect. That furries, really? Furries are going to other?
They're so open and accepting, right?
Clearly not.
It's not just.
What if the AI put on a fursuit? Would they accept it then? It was like, guys, I'm one of you. But put it in a human suit. Then it's technically a furry, right? It's wearing a human costume or whatever.
In some way, yeah, crossing the boundaries. It's not just long-running online communities. Inkblot is a budding art platform funded on Kickstarter in 2021 that went into open beta just this week. They've already taken a, quote, no-tolerance policy against AI art and updating their terms of service to exclude it. Platforms that haven't taken a stand are now facing public pressure to clarify their policies. DeviantArt is one of the most popular online art communities, and increasingly members are complaining that their feeds are getting flooded with AI-generated art.
Okay, well, block the people uploading it. Well, first of all, it's insane of them to pretend like they can tell the difference.
Yeah.
Like you probably can with like DALL-E, the original. You obviously
like the free one that you can use. Yeah, DALL-E Mini is what that one's called.
But even then, if a human being did some artwork and they just did some weird stuff to the face,
right,
it would be indistinguishable. You can't tell AI generated artwork from human generated artwork.
Yeah, I don't know how they are figuring this out or claiming to know. So ArtStation has also been quiet as AI-generated images grow in popularity there. Trending on ArtStation is one of the most popular prompts for AI art because of the particular aesthetic and quality of work found there, which nudges the AI to generate work scraped from it, leading to a future Ouroboros where AI models will be trained on AI-generated art found there. And that's what we're getting into here, because at the beginning of AI-generated art, these technologies ingested the billions of images on the internet into their database from which the new arts are generated. Well, once they scrape the internet again, they're going to be scraping all the AI-generated art,
and there's a lot of it,
into the AI-generated database. And so we're going to see, as they're saying here, AI-generated art will also be using AI art as its basis as well in the future.
At what point does that become unique? Mm-hmm. How many cycles of AI learning from AI art is it going to take before people say, yes, this is a unique thing?
And how much louder are people going to continue to holler about this and continue to cry about this? Because it's not going to go away. You can ban it for your precious little Reddit subforum or your own little website or your big website. But there's going to be a growing community of people who love this technology because it puts art within the reach of anyone who doesn't have that talent, that anybody can just create anything they want now. And it's awesome. And that's the way it should be. And that's the way it's going to be. Sorry, guys. Can't put this cat back in the bag. See you tomorrow night. Online in the meantime, freetalklive.com. Inflation, a sidelined labor force, and ever-increasing interest rates. It's the perfect storm for pushing the U.S. economy over the edge. Savvy investors are diversifying into gold and silver with BullionMax.com. You can buy direct from BullionMax.com without talking to a salesperson, and your precious metals will ship fully insured directly to your home. Free Talk Live listeners can now order one of BullionMax's most popular products, the Goldback. Now in stock, but supplies are going fast. To get your Goldbacks, go to BullionMax.com/FTL. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook.